Fan, 10 years ago, you told your wife you wanted to be a filmmaker. What was going on in your life at that time?
Yeah. Woke up one day 10 years ago and shocked her by going, "Hey, I think I want to make movies." And she was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And I think what was going on in my life was, uh, I just, I was a photographer at the time, and I just loved stories. And at the time, I was telling stories of one frame. Then I was like, "Oh, it'd be interesting if I just could write a story, write a movie." And I didn't know what the first thing about um, what making a movie is all about, and I wasn't even one that watched a lot of movies, and she was the one. She was one in our relationship that watched movies, and but I wanted to tell stories, and so I went to Amazon. No, I went to this place in Dallas. It's called Half Price Books, and I would buy as many books I could about screenwriting or movies or what directors wrote, and I would just read that and get my hands on as much scripts as I could. And I spent the next year or two just writing. And that at that time the DSLR camera came about, and Canon came out, and you start doing great videos. And I was like, oh, this is seemed like a natural transition from being a photographer. Now I could be a videographer. So that was sort of the start of it all. My kind of desire to change things up, tell more stories in a different way. And then she was like, "Oh my gosh, you just started your photography career and it's going good. Why don't you open up a restaurant too and do everything that's like percentage wise difficult to do?" And so I just became disciplined and woke up each morning and try to write a sentence. So, and then 10 years later, you got to film.
And previously, were you an early riser, or was this a new routine you were getting into?
I think I am personally an early riser, especially with writing. There's a For me personally, I find that from 6 to 9 a.m. I write best that time, and it's a struggle after 9 a.m. So I think it's because I get up right away, everything's quiet, and if something's brewing that night before, I have a better clarity of it. Some people work at different hours, but I just found over the years that was my sweet spot, because I think it felt like alone. Nothing could bother me, and I didn't want to be on the computer, and I could be quiet and things like that. So that was my sweet spot. Though I don't wake up at 6 every morning. It just depends if I'm working on a project. I would get up that early.
Don't feel bad. Charles Bukowski would start at noon. So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But what do you think happens after 9 a.m.? Is it just something mental in your brain that you're...
I think it's because of a couple hours of art. I think what happens, especially for me, I was, because your brain's always trying to solve problems, solve what does this character have? What's the story? What's happening? So it's almost like you're constantly doing a Rubik's Cube and not getting one side done, and then that's how I always felt. So after 3 or 4 hours, there's fatigue, I think, for me. So I would take a break, or I would just force myself to work on something. And I took it kind of seriously because I think I got tired of not taking everything else so not seriously in my life. And I was like, what would I wake up each day that I would enjoy and try to get better at? And writing was something that was personal, for me, that no one could take away. So I didn't have to wait for a producer or an actor, or if I was in a band, I didn't have to wait for the drummer or the bassist, or I could just get up and write, and I think that was so freeing, and that's what I enjoyed about the idea of writing a script versus a novel. A script in my head was like a 100-page poem, and I always wanted to be a poet for some reason, you know, and I knew that each word had a lot to it. You know, you can't waste a word or a space. You know, so that's how I think I got better. My scripts weren't so tight. They were just on these things. But I think now, 10 years later, they, you know, cliches are correct for a reason. You know, they keep saying like "kill your babies." Like, what's that mean? I was like, oh, that's such a great line or a great scene or great dialogue. They're like, oh, it just doesn't fit. You just kind of got to knock it out. And I got a little bit better of not crying when I have to kill my own little babies, but writing is something I enjoy. So waking up each morning, I get excited for that. But then, you know, I'm not a robot, so I get fatigued and tired out.
Does something have to have meaning, like an intense meaning for you to want to take time to do it?
That's good. I think, yeah, I think so. It had to mean something for me or something for me to investigate. But I think as I get older, I'm really investigating myself. I think that's what I'm trying to find, even with these stories, with all these different characters. I think it's like, it's a way of me trying to understand what I'm about. And again, that's very ego-driven. Being a director in this is all like this, but you know, but I think I'm trying to see how I relate into this world and what inspires me, what makes me scared, what makes me happy, and you know, if I have a certain feeling, I just hope there's another human being that possibly might have the same feeling. So that's how, you know, your work might be able to connect. I think if someone out there, you know, feels the same way, and that's all you could hope for as any artist, is try to get what you have in your brain, your heart out, and then if it comes out correctly, maybe someone might understand that. You know.
And climbing the corporate ladder is ego-driven too. So you know that artists get a bad rap, and writers, and I understand that there's a lot of internal stuff that comes out in people's work, but you know, people climbing a corporate ladder also.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was talking to a friend who was a scientist prior to becoming a filmmaker, and he was like, the cutthroat world of being a scientist and getting that research grant, getting this, taking credit for certain findings and things. It's just another thing. Hey, that might be a movie idea.
Wow, yeah, that's true.
The black swan of a science world.
From the moment that you told your wife you wanted to be a filmmaker, what immediate changes did you make in your life?
In terms of craft or trying to understand it, was reading and studying everything I could about writing, about you know, how it's structured, or how you format, and just the basics of things. So I kind of took it as my own way of making my own school. You know, of like, I want to learn this. This is interesting. You know, I just can't, you know, write on a napkin or legal pad. I just wanted to see if that, you know, I guess I could, but I didn't. So the changes I made was really making a commitment to trying to get better at it. It wasn't a thing that I said, this is going to be a career. It was a thing that was like, I just wanted to do it, you know. So I didn't know if it was even going to be something feasible. That didn't even cross my mind. It gave me something that I could wake up and do and challenge myself. And I think I just never reached a point where I was frustrated enough to quit. I think that was what the screenwriting, because obviously once you have a script, then you needed to, you know, produce the thing. So you have to shoot the thing, and then I think I just got I just try to do it all because it seemed fun. You know, call my friends up or my family and go, hey, could you just, you know, come? Could we just spend this weekend and do this? And then that's how it all began. You know, just to see if I could do it from start to finish. So and when I did a short film, it was fun. It was I liked the whole process, the storyboarding, the getting people together, mapping things out, and seeing the words come alive from actors or family members. I don't know if I would call them actors, but they were gracious enough to help me out. So.
You said previously you went to a bookstore that was in Texas. Sorry, was it in Dallas or where was it?
Yeah, Dallas.
Oh, okay.
And it was It's called Half Price Books,
Nice.
which people would sell back their books, and it had, you could get all these books for really, really, cheap and things like that. So I would buy a whole bunch of like books on directors, books on. I think I got that Robert Rodriguez book there, the Rebel book, and then I got tons of other things, and then I would search for scripts online to read. Thank goodness for the internet. It's like you could just get anything you want, and that's what that's what helped me. Just trying to learn and get better.
Were there other writers in the Dallas area, or was that something that was not part of the culture at that time?
There's, I've always had, I always wish I was able to be more gregarious or open, get involved more with the community, or specifically the film community or theater. I just wasn't able to do that at that point, because I think I didn't know where I was headed myself. So I just started just to write. I think it was such an isolating and freeing thing. But I really didn't meet too many other filmmakers at the time, because I didn't think I was one. I was just trying to write, and figure it all out. I sort of did the same thing with my photography career, and there's many ways where you could go. You could become an assistant, you can do this. I just wrote a business plan and called myself a photographer, and shot as many things as I can, weddings and things I could, and figure out lighting and all that kind of stuff. And then I think I work better that way. It might not be the right way, but at least I could kind of understand what I'm doing wrong. But I oftentimes I wish I did have a mentor or a group and go, hey, my second act sucks. Why am I always drowning in this? And they could say, hey, you don't have this. There's not a defined goal. There's this, blah, 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 blah. But I was really honest, because if you read a script like Ordinary People, if you read a script like Leaving Las Vegas, and then you read your script, you got to be sort of honest and go, it's not close yet. You got to work on that. Why, how come I can't, why am I turning each page like these other scripts that I love? And that was the same thing when I was a photographer. When I looked at photos in the magazines, I had to go, to be a photographer or working photographer, the hard truth is my photos have to look as good or better than this. So until I was able to do that and gain the confidence, I was just hard on myself in that way. So I just got to get better, whether it took 2 days or 2 years or 15 or 10. I was ready to put in that, because I don't know why. You just kind of keep going, and because you wanted to get better, I think. So I took the same approach with filmmaking and screenwriting. I wanted to write scenes that made me turn the page myself. Yeah.
Do you think it's okay to just not be part of a group? There's a lot of pressure, especially in Western culture, to be part of a group and join something and do all that. And that's great. Some people really rise to the occasion. I think some people are better just by themselves internally.
Yeah, I think it's up to your personality, and I think you need to find that balance. It's sort of like dieting, I guess. It's like you can't do one extreme, especially with filmmaking. Writing itself is so alone, but the filmmaking process is so collaborative. So you need to work with others and be able to do that. So that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't wanted to strictly be a writer. I wanted to work with other people, but I love the isolation of the writing process. But now I've learned the beauty of rewriting and the input of other people and getting notes and getting, hey, this is, you gotta get to it faster. You got to do this. Oh, this is maybe not so right for the story. So I like taking notes because it gets me to think of other things. Because when you're writing for a script, it could take you 3, 6 months, 4 months, whatever. You're so alone, and maybe that's why other people have writing partners, so you could bounce ideas. But to get notes, it gives me an idea. Oh, I never thought about that. Let me plug that in, and maybe I could come up with something else. It's pretty freeing for me to do that, and not take it personal, and maybe I'm just more optimistic that like people are telling you this not because they don't want you to make a crappy story. It's because they think it could help, and it's your job to synthesize all that information and see if it does. I think that's what happens. That's even being a director, because you get like so much information and so many decisions you have to make, and you have to make it within split seconds sometime. And hey, is this makeup too heavy? Hey, what's the color of that clothes? Or is this location work? Are we going to do another take? Does the actor feel safe? I think it just happens so much. So you really have to be on your toes and be adaptable. I think that's a vital skill even for screenwriters, is to be adaptable and to take notes well.
And feedback, criticism,
and just get back to work and take it. And then you know what? You could do it. You can make a version of the notes. You could do it. And if you don't like it, you go back to the previous version and continue that way. But at least you shouldn't have if you follow that process, for at least for me, I wouldn't have a writer's block, because someone gave you a door. Go to this door. It might not be the right door, but you get to go through it. So you could write that out, and you're like, it doesn't feel right, or maybe maybe I'm missing that scene. We need to add that scene in again. So it's an interesting process. It's definitely like sculpting. You could continuously keep writing. It's weird. Maybe it's funny just to drop the pen and stop writing, because I'll reread the script constantly, or the first page, the first line, and go, I gotta stop. I'm a little obsessive now. I gotta take a break, and even the rhythms, I would read it out loud. The feel of the words flow, right? So that's what because I would imagine if I was a reader, if I was reading this, and if it's boring or that exposition's too long, or the scene heading's too long, I need to cut that out. So that's sort of my process lately, is cutting. I think that's being an editor, because I edit as well. So you get used to cutting pieces together.
Looking back on it now, do you think you made the right choice for yourself, choosing the filmmaking path, knowing that you wanted to challenge yourself? It sounds like you don't compete with others. You kind of are very much about challenging yourself. Maybe I'm wrong.
If I think about it, and I'm very lucky to be able to make that choice and feel like it is the right choice. Certainly, it's not the easiest of paths to take. It's not like if you go get your bachelor's and you get your master's or PhD, and then you do your residency and you do this, and you pass a license, that you're going to be a psychologist. There isn't like routes, and there isn't a structure that even determines that you are. So there was blind faith. I think it just more of like you do something and then you get obsessed about it and you do everything you can to make it happen. I think that's just what happened to me. And filmmaking ended up being a medium I was drawn to because I kind of failed at everything else. I wanted to be a musician and that didn't work out. I wanted to be a writer, that didn't work out. And I got into photography and I got this and I was like, wow, you could combine that all, and that's what filmmaking is called. I never even knew that was possible, you know? So once I knew that the possibilities of it maybe I felt like a kid again. I was like, so I think that's what drove me in telling a story visually, with music, with sound. That was I was hook, line, and sinker, you know, and coming up with stories each time and developing that, and then now, you know, working with actors, working with art department, working with the crew, you're like, whoa, this is awesome. You know, you asked me before about being, you know, isolated, but now you get to get out of your hibernation and then play, you know, play with everyone. I think that's the fun part about filmmaking.
And I think you said just off camera, you knew what you didn't want, you know, and so
yeah,
that's an interesting lesson.
Exactly. I was very good at that. I maybe didn't know what I want, but I knew what I didn't want. And that's the same thing with, like, if I compose something in a frame, I know I didn't want that in the frame. I don't want that in a frame. So what is it that's left in the frame? So I took a similar approach. You know, I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want to have regrets. I didn't want to, you know, because I had those before. I wasted time. I wasted this. I didn't have confidence. I didn't have these things. And so when I started, like you asked, I just started one day at a time to see if I enjoyed it. And then if I didn't, I probably would have been obsessed with making ramen noodles. That would be the next thing. How do you make those noodles? How do I get it right texture? Oh, is this broth right? Okay, then you want to sell it. Then you want to do it. So I probably would have been obsessed with something else if I didn't, you know, fall like in love with filmmaking.
At what point in this journey did you begin your production company?
Early on, so once you sort of started, you know, the short films and things like that, I just, my first short film was called Balloons Go Pop. And then so I started Go Pop Films. And that started with the short films that I was doing. And then when we embarked on making the feature film, we partnered up with Red Productions, which is based in Fort Worth, Texas, and Santa Monica. And then recently we started a commercial division of representing different commercial directors for that. So it was a slow process. It was me all the way back then, and then just learning the business of things, and then going, hey, you know, if this person could start a production company, what's stopping me from? Legal paperwork, you know, things like that. So that's exactly the path. And I wanted to have something I could control as a business. Yeah.
Can you talk about the process for starting your business? Like step by step, what did you do?
Yeah, so it depends on, you know, obviously if you start out first, if it's just by yourself, for people out there not knowing, you could be a sole proprietor, so you don't have to, you know, you don't have to start an LLC. I eventually moved into Go Pop Films as an LLC to gain the protection of that. But with that in mind, there's different fees involved state fees, different, taxes and things like that involved. So being like a producer versus like a director or anyone like that, you have to sort of be on top of all the legal regulations, the taxes and things like that. So when you start like your production company, whether it's a commercial production company, you start charging people fees, producing video content, editing, and then you would charge that. Then that would be your revenue for the year, and you minus all your expenses. And then at first I was doing all my taxes and things, and then you want to find a good good accountant. After a while, it gets a little bit hairy and things like that. And for those who are maybe starting a film or a movie or feature film, we had our film's called All Roads to Perla. Prior to that, it was called Sleeping in Plastic. We started a Sleeping in Plastic LLC. So the film itself is its own entity, separate from Go Pop Films. So each film that you will make will have its own, life. So that's sort of the progression of that. So I had this idea that, wow, okay, I'll have Go Pop Films, and we'll do films. We do short films and hopefully get into feature films. And then I had this other great idea, because I was trying to get into the commercial world of directing and video. And then instead of being in other people's rosters, why don't I create my own commercial vision and put and collect talent that I think that have a great voice and professional and could deliver video content and start it that way. So I liked the producing part. After I was produced the first feature film, I was like, whoa, this is a pain in the butt, but you learn so much. Then you almost like don't want to. For me, I like producing. I think it became it was fun, to put things together, to help a director help their vision come alive with the constraint of the budget. And that's the key. I was lucky to work with Red Sanders and Derek Brown from Red Productions. When I first met them, they're like, "Man, how could we help you make your vision?" And I was like, wow. Everyone else, they were very honest about that. And I remember Derek Brown was like, that's part about being a good producer, is helping the director get their vision out there and come alive. And that's what I would like to do with other filmmakers, is help them get their vision alive. So I love that aspect too.
Did you form the LLCs yourself, or did you use a lawyer or some type of legal service?
Oh, LegalZoom.
Okay.
LegalZoom right there. It's pretty easy. That's what we did for Go Pop Films. Yeah.
And then for the movie as well?
No, for the movie, Red Productions, Red Entertainment, and us, we had a lawyer, because I believe because we were shooting in Oklahoma and Texas, so we had a couple different kind of more complicated things. So Red had a lawyer that he always used for their films. So we went with the same one because this would have been their 7th film that they've done, our film. So I was going with them. I think that's the funniest. The thing I've learned is this whole industry. I've learned is it's about leverage. It's kind of interesting. When I was starting and trying to push the script around, and they would go, "Oh, you haven't done a feature film before. It's all you have. This is all about execution. Could you execute this? Can you do that?" And then once I was fortunate enough to work with Red Productions, who've done all these great films before, I was able to work with. That's like playing with someone who is better at you in tennis, so you get better. So these last 3 or 4 years working with all these people was a dream, because I was still absorbing and learning what this industry is about, what's producing about, what's the legal work, how do you get things done. It's like being a director is different. Being a producer, you can't have a sustainable career if you don't make your investors money back. Being a director, even though the movie might not be a financial success, but it might garner some accolades, your career could keep going. So the producer's role is really it's brutal. It's strictly business. You gotta make your investors money back, and that's a different mindset. So I love all the challenges of it.
What's one thing that was a surprise, whether it was the paperwork, forming the LLC, talking to the attorney, that you were so glad that you'll always take with you moving forward? That maybe was a surprise, whether it was you didn't know when the fees for the LLC were due, like just different things, which I know those come up quick.
The surprise is when you get an IRS a letter coming at you. That's a big surprise. No.
Yeah. Well, it took Al Capone down.
Yeah. So you don't want to mess with the IRS. So the surprise is there's always a surprise. The surprise is if you get used to learning, if you get used to your mistakes but don't repeat them, I think that's great. Because you could go to all these great schools like producing or business schools and learn a lot of things, but it's something about being in the trenches and go, oh my gosh, that $800 fee, what's the date? October 15th? It has to be in. It's like, so did the actors, did we get the agreements done? Did the agents come and talk, and did we get this signed? So the surprise is get everything in writing, sign everything. It's all business. There's a reason that's why it's called the movie business, not the movie. Let's make Van's art. It's you got to enjoy that aspect of it. But if you love storytelling and you know how to kind of play and learn the rules of the movie business, then I think you'll enjoy it.
Great. Yeah. No one wants to get a letter.
Yeah. No one wants to get a letter from the IRS, and then
And that's one of those things where you want to call right away. And even if you're on hold for 2 hours, you just want to handle that.
It's all those things, and there's fees, and they'll just keep going. So, the things I guess the thing that surprised me probably is once you think you have it all sent and done, there's always something else. It's like, I thought we did that. Didn't the deliverables, didn't we deliver that? Or wasn't that signed? Or what do you mean? It's like you have to be very thorough. Yeah.
When you formed your production company, did you take out a loan to purchase equipment?
Yeah. So when I first started before, the equipment was just like your DSLR cameras, your sound, lights, and everything. So it was credit cards. It was credit cards. I didn't do a personal loan, and this was like 10 plus years ago. Yeah, and then but then as you get more involved and what's going on when we've switched from sole proprietor to LLC, that's when you had investors in the company. So then you had capital and equity and things like that you have to sort out. But I was just like, any other small business owner with their dream and credit cards, it's a rough game. I had a friend who opened up this bar with 8-9 credit cards, and it became most popular bar, it won most popular bar in the world a couple of years back. It's called Employees Only, and I remember way back when, and they had this dream, and they did it. It's not a a good start, but it was the only start I had because I wanted to do it, and I didn't have I didn't go to the bank and go, hey, I need $50,000 to start this. I didn't go small business loans. I kept my overhead low. That's the thing. So then once you start having jobs, then you could pay things out. So the key is keeping your overhead low, which means, don't be straddled with rent, payroll. If I would spend on anything, I didn't spend that much on equipment. I spent more on marketing. I would do that because, so that's what we still do,
Yeah, and don't be late with that credit card payment because
$29
late fee then goes on your credit report, and
then
you get a call,
You get
8
a
o'clock
call.
on a Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hi, can I speak to Van, please?
Yeah, exactly. You asked that question, was it the right path? It's the path of an entrepreneur, I think. There's an inherent stress that no one sort of talks about all the time, of whether it's your credit cards, whether it's your investors, where it's getting distribution. I'm going to get in this film festival. I'm going to get that. After all years of all of this, you become comfortable being uncomfortable. So you start to also become smarter and become a better business person. I always love it when I see signs that says, been in business since 1984. It's like, that's awesome. You know how hard it is to maintain any business? There's a stretch amount of time, whether you're shining shoes or this. It's the same thing with getting a movie. So I kind of had to tell myself to take a chill pill and take one day at a time, or I'm going to get an ulcer and a goiter if I keep worrying about are we going to get in this film festival? Are we going to do that? Are we going to do this? It's like, then you sit back, it's like, okay, if you do, then what? If you do, then what? It all comes back down to, why did you start 10 years ago? I love writing. I love doing this. So I always wanted to try to tell myself to not make something I love an albatross, So I have to really remind myself of that every time, So, okay, is this what you want to do? Okay, get better. Don't become cynical, things like that.
How many people were involved when you started your production company, and then now how many people are involved?
When I started, it was me and my wife, and now it is me with 4 other folks and a whole bunch of interns, and a roster of really great creatives and directors. So it's become like a little group, and I'm very fortunate of that to find teammates who want to go through the battlefield of being part of a production company. So we started out small, as just like anyone, I'll be sitting out there going, how do people do it? What do you have to do? So I just started it, didn't worry about the equipment. If there was a bigger job to do, we would rent it. I didn't want to buy $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of equipment and have it sit there for a year or two and let it depreciate and not get its value. So now, everything's taken a hit now with the pandemic. Even we have that. We also have a sales rep that represents Go Pop Films and the directors in the Midwest and Southeast. So what they do is they pitch the ad agencies and art directors on our roster of directors, and they will send if there are treatments or spots or things that we could bid on. So things like that. We also go to direct to brand or direct to companies, that need video content. But at the moment, just things are obviously production is at a halt and it's picking up. But you want to be safe, and that's the key. Low overhead. Keep your low overhead so you could maintain and sustain. So when the economy and when it comes up, you'll be able to position yourself. So if we think about it right now, as we are in pre-production, that's how we've talked about it. It's like we're in pre-production, so when production comes, we're ready to go. So being able to service our clients and things like that to our best of our ability. I think that's where we're at right now, pandemic era.
Right, and just with other booms and busts, like let's say the .com. When things were really good in the 90s, it also, can you talk about not getting maybe too confident, knowing that there will be a winter, and there's always a winter,
Yeah, I think the life cycle of things, and that you just have to kind of be steady and know, especially with this, you might have a lot of clients, or maybe your business has one big client, but what if they disappear? What if your client was a lot of the travel industry right now? Or what if your clients were, but then what if you weren't busy? Then you have a plastic company and they're needing a lot of things. So it just all depends where you're positioned in the market changes. So you just have to be, what's the saying? Expect the worst, prepare for the best, or vice versa. It's one of those things where you can't be a fat cat when you just kind of like keep going, because there will be lean times. And the same thing with films. When films come out, like we just released our film, we don't know what the market. That's the toughest thing about filmmaking, because you have a thing that you started 3, 2, 4, 10 years ago, but when it reaches market, is it the right time for this film? Does this touch a nerve? Is it 2 years too early, 2 years too late? So it's the same time when you release a product. Is it right or not? Maybe it catches on later. What was that with Donnie Darko? It wasn't so hot here in the States. It goes international. It comes back. It's a 5-year process. It happens with a lot of different things. So for anyone who's have a short film or other films, I think you go back and focus on that creating, because you can't determine the market, but you can prepare for it. I think that's the balance you have to do. Be prepared for lean times, and that'll be the best way to go about it.
What area of business does your production company focus on?
Well, we have a lot of different directors who have, whether it's healthcare, food, fashion, documentaries. So we covered a lot of different industries. So we could tackle them all. So I figured this out because when I was, as a director trying to get on into a production company, I wasn't going to get hired for a comedy spot, because my reel or my work isn't comedic. I wasn't going to get hired for food, because I didn't do any food. I had a kind of documentary feel. Those are the different jobs that I would get, more cinematic. So I thought we'll have our company, instead of turning down jobs, let's find the best directors who does food, who does cars, who does fashion, who does products, who does travel, and that's your roster. So if you're a client that needs cinematic images that need to have your brand or message elevated and tell a story, that's what we do. We want to help you tell your story, and that's our selling point, like bringing cinematic imagery and production to elevate your brand and your company's message. So it could be wine industry, it could be fashion. So we pretty much tackle it.
How do you know these directors are a fit for your company?
First, so when we see the directors work, and it has to be a certain level and certain sort of voice that they're telling. Second, I meet with them, and if they have a similar philosophy or personality, because we don't want to work with jerks, there's already so many walking around. It's hard. We want to work with good people who are focused on and producing really good work, and also are nice. And we had this motto of work hard and be nice, of that aspect. So the directors not only have to be talented, they just have to be nice people, because when we're on set and when you're dealing with clients, who wants a temperamental director? It's like, we should be fortunate to be working for you. I want to be surrounded with people with that same attitude of like, how can we help you? It's not like, business is, it's like nothing, you can't take anything for granted. Every little job, every big job, it's a job. They should be treated the same, highly valuable. Just like I remember Neiman Marcus, I think someone was telling me that sales training or someone's training, that you treat everyone who walks through the door the same. Someone who could look like they're transient versus someone who has a mink coat. You never know who's who, right? So that's the same thing with an email, with a call, if you're a client base. We're just fortunate to be able to see if we can help you. And that's the type of directors, if they have that attitude and they want to put their nose to the grind, then they do. And funny enough, a lot of our directors have a background in photography, similar to me. So they're actually started out as photographers too. So it's nice to have just sort of that. I know visually that they could capture what they want. They could either act as their own DP or work with DPs and things like that. So funny enough, a lot of our directors are shooters themselves. Yeah.
And what's interesting is too, sometimes, just like you said, the mink coat versus the transient analogy. Sometimes in LA, the mink coat, the more show, the less someone actually.
Yeah.
That's the weird part about being here, and maybe this is the same in New York City too. But like a lot of times, that's just a front. It's not real.
Exactly, and you just you just never know. Yeah. And so. Those are the type of directors or graphic designers or animators or people we want to work with, even in our crew and things like that. I know they always say it starts from the top, and hopefully we could create a culture that is professional, but also creates that atmosphere where your voice is heard, no one's, above anyone else. Everyone's open to suggestions, and everyone's artistic, but we don't need to be Van Gogh here and be all crazy if you don't get your way.
What are your day-to-day duties with your company? Maybe pre-COVID, now during COVID.
So you get up, you fire up that laptop or desktop, and then you go through your emails. A lot right now. Let's talk, since it's really right now, COVID is research. A lot of research that's going on in terms of new clients that we want to kind of work with, or a new industry. We have a new industry that we're trying to penetrate, is the golf and luxury resort industry. Prior to COVID, we've got a couple great directors who do that. So we're trying to match that up. Now that's the commercial side, but for the film side is we have a couple. I have a couple different films in development right now, and one is we're developing the script, or just shaping it up to go out for attachments and things like that. So the last couple of months, I've been trying to get that script right, and then also we're also producing this feature film for Yifki. She's a Dutch filmmaker. It will be her first feature film. Her short film Lily has been screened over 50 film festivals around the world. It's a Me Too horror film, and Phosphor is one of her first feature film. We're fortunate enough to be producing that, so we're trying to get things lined up for that as well. So, like we were talking about before, there's still a lot of things that could be done, even though everyone's getting used to Zoom and all this stuff. But it's laying the seeds and getting that all done. So that takes most of the day, and also preparing for. We just released the film like 2 weeks ago, September 25th, last month, and then so we're still pushing that as well, so lots of little different things on our plate.
And so maybe pre-COVID, was it responding, and post-COVID or during COVID is now hunting, doing research?
Yeah, hunting, doing research, and because you don't know who's going to be left standing. It's a weird thing, Even we were talking with our sales agent, who we've released our film for North America, but we're still entertaining international territories like Germany, UK, Ireland, and all these other parts. But because of the pandemic and things, different companies have gone under, who's staying. So it's almost like everyone's waiting to see what's left, who's standing, where's the so there everyone's adjusting, and so you kind of have to take a optimistic point and do your research and tread water until there's a break. Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, I mean, for commercial work, we used to, we had a lot of shoots postponed, canceled and things like that. So, you deal with the blows, and you take it with a chin, but you guys still stand up and prepare as when things open up.
What have you found is the best way to make money as a filmmaker?
Get involved in anything that's possible that will help you get better as a filmmaker, whether that's editing, PAing, writing, taking any job, because that helps you as a writer. Be a security guard, be a bus driver, be Amazon Prime delivery, because you're building different experiences, and you could write about that and still have a living. There's only until you reach that kind of threshold where you can make a sustainable career with your art or with your filmmaking. But when you're starting out, you take as many jobs as you can. Teach if you can. Teaching helps, any kind of thing. So I think you just have to hustle, find any job, survive, pay the bills. And that, if you can do that, that actually teaches you how to get a film made, because it's not, getting a film made is the exact same way, because it's not easy. You have to use every little ounce of your creativity, your experience, your inexperience, just combine it on and will it to happen. So if you have to Uber drive for 2 months, so you could write for 2 months, you have to make those sacrifices.
What was one of your best part-time jobs that really helped you actually be creative? And then maybe what was one of your worst? I
always said the two things that made me become a better photographer, not a filmmaker, but photographer, was being a waiter and being a wedding photographer. You see people at their worst. It's like, if you can handle that, if you can handle the pressure of those things, that would help. I think it's like, because you know what happens? Plan A never works. It's always plan B, C, and D. So if you could get that in your DNA and your bloodline to always have plan D ready, that's what I found filmmaking is about, is adjusting. So the job that I learned was, because you know how to read folks, read people, if they're happy with the food or not food, or if they don't want you to come near their table. Those are great instincts to learn. So when you're making a film, are you giving the actors enough space? Or does this person need more direction? This person doesn't need any direction. You have to know does this crew member need that? Do we need to sit down? So each one, you have to read people differently and under stress. Stress is caused by lack of time and lack of money. So that's what happens in filmmaking. So people it's like bees running around like, ah. So if you know that's going to happen, and immediately find the solutions. So they say never let them see you sweat, but I try not to let people see me all riled up. But I'm also crying in the inside, and I'm just smiling through. But but being a waiter helped me doing that.
You will learn to think on your feet, definitely.
Yeah, any kind of customer service thing. Your second part of the question, what job that I didn't like, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, what was maybe, and maybe they're the same ones, that was the toughest, because I was wondering what was one that actually helped your creativity, which sounds like learning how to read people.
Yeah.
The other two.
It's being empathetic. That's why, any job that could get you feeling what the other person is going through, the more you can do that, I think that will help with your writing, that'll help with your direction, your producing skills, because once you kind of could train yourself to walk in other people's shoes, you gain empathy, different perspective, and then you gain an understanding. It might not always be the right understanding, but you gain a different perspective, so you don't be so narrow-minded on your particular view. And I think that breeds creativity. That's the spark that kind of, whoa, now I could create this because this person feels that way. You try to get all that energy and form something. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe to learning how to de-escalate a situation. And so whether you're working in food service or, at someone's wedding or supermarket, there's going to be people that either going to try to test you or they're really angry, and just learning how to de-escalate before the blow up.
Exactly. I think that's it. It's a skill. I was a portrait photographer, and to get someone to trust you, to relax, to get you to do what you want, or them, how do you get a sitter to give you a pose that you like? it took a lot of time. It deals with trust, and how do you gain that is like giving something from yourself to the sitter. You can't always take. So I take that with me working with people, with the crew. We talked about before, how can I help? How can we help you? What could I tell myself that will make me vulnerable? And for you to, for us to gain that trust and that respect, because I think that's important. That's important. Just an important way to treat your neighbor is with respect, and you want to understand what their life's about.
Right, and I like that giving of yourself while you're on set. So if you have an actor that maybe they can deliver, but maybe for whatever reason it's a tense situation, and you're not sure why. I mean, was it another person we interviewed talked about sets being pressure cookers, and sometimes there's personalities on sets, whatever, and it's just getting that person to feel comfortable. I like that giving.
Yeah, and that takes. It's like chess. It's like 2, 3. You have to think like 2 or 3 steps ahead. And I hate to say it, it's like almost knowing the situation and how to diffuse it or manipulate it and calm things down. If you want someone riled up, what would get someone riled up? If you need that reaction, if you want someone in shock, like this is an interesting story. I forget who the photographer was, but they had to do a shoot of, let's say, I think it was like the Queen of England or something like that, right? And then they're like, oh, she always gives the same look. We want something different. So they were shooting at the end. It was like, oh, she knew, like, the Queen was like a dog lover or something. And at the end it was like, oh, how was your ride here? And she says, oh, it was great until we ran over a dog. And then it click, And then so all these stories, and when I was younger, I was naive to think like photography is the truth. But no, there's 3 truths: your truth, my truth, and the truth. So if I wanted you to pose a certain way, if I want to light you in a certain way, the sitter would never know. It's so odd to me to that power later. Like, oh, you could kind of manipulate light and story differently. So I try to hold that kind of like knowledge kind of precious in terms of like understanding and one, that if we're on the same page and this scene is about pain, how do we go there? And you need some extra help on that. That's where I think I could come in and maybe help and go, let's talk that out. Or maybe we don't need to talk about that out. Just feel it. Just let it rip. So each actor is totally different. The same with working with a DP. You got to trust each other. That's why it's fun being a director. You work with people because they know what they're doing. You just get out of the way and maybe just like, could you try it this way? And they're like, okay, it's easy now. It's like for me, because everyone who you're working with, I trust them to just do what they're there to do, and that's the best part. I think that's where magic happens.
And just going back to when you talked about working at weddings,
yeah,
and they can be pressure cookers too. Sometimes it's not actually the bride that's the problem; it's the family.
Oh yeah, it's the family.
Did you get that?
Oh, were you a wedding photographer too? Because I got that same thing. This uncle was like,
I've worked some. Yeah.
It's like, well, I got about 300 photos of them twirling. You need another one? Yeah, I got. But again, it's the client. And client's always right, and you got to like suck it up. But I did 14 weddings, and that was enough. That was enough for me, and I knew that skill set is totally different. It's a definite great. And there's some great wedding photographers out there. I think I got a glimpse of it, and remember I told you I was a quitter. I quit all the time. It's like quit wedding photography.
Yeah. When did you know it was right? Was it the last one?
When I had anxiety and going, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think when you have that feeling of like I think it's like I made a point if it felt off, I'm gonna try my best not to feel that bad, you know, even if I have to get another job and become a floral assistant, whatever it is. I didn't mind going backwards because I didn't think it was going backwards. I think it was safety, you know, in terms of I want to get used to being where I want to be. I didn't know where I wanted to be. I knew I didn't want to be that. Remember we talked about, like, I knew what I didn't want to do, and I didn't know I want to be a filmmaker, and that was like only until I was 35 years old. You know, I didn't know that's the path. So, so when I would quit when it didn't feel right, and for too long, I just didn't want to waste a year or 2 years being somewhere I didn't want to be.
You know, weddings are tough. They're almost like high school reunions.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of ego, and sometimes it's not coming from the bride and groom.
Yeah, and there's only a certain amount of you know, I'll be in a church and the photographer is not allowed to use their flash, but everyone else is allowed to use their flash. I'm like, oh, I can't eat it. So, but that's minor. I value the 14 weddings. It gave me learn how to deal with pressure, and because if you miss the moment, you don't go back to another I do. You know, hey, could we take two? Let's do another take, and like that was it, sir. So if you get used to that pressure, and the pressure to it's okay if you do fail, because what's the worst thing? For me, the worst thing in life is to die. So if it's not going to kill me, I could survive it. You know, I might not pay rent the next month, but I could survive. So that was, I just tricked my brain to do weird things.
Dan, can we talk about your life as a daydreamer? I understand that daydreaming is very important to your creative process. What's daydreaming like for you when you were a kid, and what is it like for you now?
I don't know. I always thought, you know, you grow up and you get in trouble for daydreaming and things like that. But sometimes you just can't help but stare outside the window and let your mind go. And I remember as a kid, I don't know if you do it, you just do it. Everyone daydreams until they're told not to, I think. And I think I wish we get nourished that more, and I think there's a lot, you know, that could be harnessed through that. I think that was always maybe a joke or a thought that maybe I could become a professional daydreamer and things like that. But I think now, in terms of like how I apply it, I apply it as a way to maybe my own way of meditating, or my own way of trying to find solutions and ideas, and maybe my own way of being in the moment or in the present. So I find daydreaming a really useful tool for me in terms of creating. I know it sounds kind of weird or stupid, but it's like it helps if I'm having like if I see or hear things, and it could lead to different things. So I could just kind of tune out, you know, and focus on that specific thought or that specific noise or sound, and it could take me, you know, to different places. I don't want to sound so like weird, but it's relaxing. Yeah.
Where have you done some of your best daydreaming? Can you do it, let's say, at a coffee shop?
You could do it. I think yeah. I think you could do it anywhere. You could do it, preferably not while you're driving, but if you're just sitting outside, sitting at a park, sitting by yourself, that you just take a moment and you think of thoughts, think of ideas, and let that kind of permeate and blossom. It could be even the thought of Hawaii, just the word Hawaii. Then it starts. Then you could focus on the sound of it, the vowels, and what that takes you. There's just different connections that you can make. So then it could take you to coffee, to pineapple, to different things, and then your brain is visualizing these images, and then I think once you kind of get used to doing that, for me, I do it just because I get lost in thought, because something might be in my head, and then it takes me somewhere, and I find that useful.
And is daydreaming the same as meditation, or they're different?
They're probably in the same world, and it's linguistics of it. If you are meditating and focusing, but I think daydreaming is cool, is because you could set ideas, you could set things in your head, and you could try to implement those if you could, remember it. It's I guess it's the opposite when you dream at night, right? When you're dreaming at night and when you have all these dreams that pop up of things, all of a sudden you might have a dream like, hey, why is that guy in my third grade class in my dream? It just pops up, right? And then when you're daydreaming, you're like the same thing. It's like, oh, but it seems like you're conscious of that. I think that opens up your creative space to accept ideas, and they go, oh, like when I get stuck writing, I guess that's why people, hey, you go for a walk, you go this, how does the ending really work? How do these subplots come together? How does that? And then people always say, they have ideas in the shower, these things, these moments, I think those are important, having those moments. I think it starts with a little bit of daydreaming, because you once you focus too much, it's like you're not seeing the possibilities, what that's like behind you or beside you. You're so narrow. You're narrowed into this script, this story. But if you let go and start thinking about the cup that's on the table of your character and how that cup reminds you of your grandmother's cup, and then the grandma when she was born here, and then that leads to this. Oh, she used to love this flower that was purple. Maybe that flower ends up somehow back in your script somehow. You just never know, So it's making associations with things that sometimes don't connect immediately. So I think that's what helps me. So I think that's a great tool, especially writing. But then there's all these things, you have to find a thread. Otherwise, they just become images. But story, you need that thread. So that's the other thing. Now is to pull all that dreaming together and have it structured. And that's the battle of screenwriting.
Did you used to get in trouble in school for daydreaming with teachers?
I might have got a U in use of time wisely, I think. So if the unsatisfactory thing. So I think that, I might have gotten that. But I always try to avoid getting in trouble. But, doesn't mean you can't be sneaky and daydream while no one's looking. So, yeah.
If you were going to teach a class on daydreaming, let's suppose, the idea of daydreaming has changed and now it's more reinforced. Let's suppose they take from different people, Einstein, different, and you put it in together into a course. What would day one be like in your daydreaming course?
Yeah, day one, I would, just introduce the thought of it and talk about what we would do during this term, and kind of structure it and go like and tell folks that what is the goal? What's our goal with this? There is science, there is technology, there's things, but there's also this thing called mystery. So and that's where the beauty of new innovation comes from, I think. So I would first talk about get everyone's opinion what daydreaming is. There isn't a specific answer, it's how you feel, but then talk about how we are just so bombarded by visuals and especially nowadays and not understanding what the visual language is. Well, why do we feel certain things when we see certain type of imagery? Maybe get in the same page and say the first third of our course would be understanding of visual language. What does that mean when we drive down Sunset Boulevard? Why do all these colors? What does yellow and purple do to us versus gray and pink and these things? So that helps. So then when you're able to understand that, then maybe you could start to visualize. And that's part of daydreaming. Daydreaming, you want to be a filmmaker. What does that entail? I didn't know, but it definitely entailed getting off the couch. Let me start with that. And then definitely entailed maybe I should go to Half Price Books and buy a book. Maybe what's the story? You think about story, and then you think about themes, and then that could lead somewhere. So yeah. Well, first third of class course, talk about visualization. How do we interpret visual language? Second third is to apply that to let's work on our thoughts and our way to daydream and recollect those things and how that could help and how long. Could you do it in 30 seconds, 30 minutes, whatever? And then the last third of the course would just to be to understand what we did, what's the goal of it, and was it successful? How could we use this in future applications of creative work? That's what maybe the first class would be like.
You mentioned mystery. Does mystery always have to be, let's say, solving a crime or figuring something out in science? Could it also be figuring out a character? Doesn't even have to be some criminal or scientific element. Mm-hmm. It's just figuring out who they are, why they did something, why they said something.
Exactly, I think so. It encompasses so much, and I think it's like I think that's what's fantastic about it, because it incorporates the unknown and incorporates things that we maybe have on the tip of our tongue, and we want to explore it and understand it. We want to solve things. We're driven by mystery. That takes us to new places. I think that's what's really neat and dynamic of understanding how to use mystery in your own work, to tell stories, to create suspense, to and then to have resolution, because we need. I think us humans, we need closure and understanding, but we also don't need to be handheld, at least for stories. Some folks might, but for me as a storyteller, I always think the audience is definitely smarter than me, and you don't want to treat them too like hand-holding everything, so you want to leave things to interpretation, but I also don't want to be so abstract that no one understands what the story is about, So those are two different things I'm battling with right now, and mystery is a good way to keep me inspired and work my way through life, trying to figure things out.
What's an example of a handheld story from a writer versus something that's too abstract?
Okay, I guess probably David Lynch is there, and a handhold would be more of, 2 + 2 = 4, that boy meets girl, they fall in love, versus boy meets girl, 4 other things could happen, things like that. So you as the storyteller, I always think it's like being a chef, right? We have these ingredients, and the way you use it, where it's, where it hits you, it's how you use these elements of story to do it. You want to handhold someone from the end and go, this person is definitely the killer, or this person is definitely the bad guy who planted this seed, who's trying to get them to break up and remarry her, or things like that. So it's up to each chef, and the audience is so vast and diverse. Like, a lot of people are definitely not gonna like some of the dishes I cook, because it's not their flavor profile. But does that mean you could deny the execution of it or the craft of it? It's like if you don't like country music, but you like, indie rock. You cannot deny Johnny Cash was a skilled and talented musician. It's just a taste. So that's what happens, I think, in terms of how you tell stories. And hand-holding is a great device. But for me, as a chef, I don't want to add too much salt, kind of like as things goes. I'll leave it to the audience a little bit more to piece the flavors together.
Do you think that people look at daydreaming in a positive way?
That's a tricky question. I was going to say yes, but then I'm going to say no, because everyone will be talking about it more, and how it's because it has more of a negative connotation, because it means you don't get anything done. Maybe if we rewrite that narrative in terms of daydreaming as a step to execution into work, where you're daydreaming of being making great leather purses, then that happened. Where you're daydreaming of going to the space. These things, it starts with some sort of idea planted in a world that seems so far away. But if you set it and you do the work, it could be attainable. I'm not saying it always can happen, but at least it gives you hope that an idea can be reached, or tried for. So I think if you ask parents, maybe they don't think it's a good thing if their kids are always daydreaming. But I hope it changes, because I love that word. I love the word dream. It's that means an idea is thought out of, and it could be possible. But we have to sometimes enjoy that process of making it possible than the result of that dream. So that's the tricky part.
How does daydreaming help us reach our goals?
Daydreaming, it helps you start with an idea. It helps you be open. And I think that is in itself a success. If you are able to open and accept new ideas and think of things that are possible, that helps. Because we need goals. How does daydream get us there? It gives us a shovel. It gives us a tool. It gives us things that we maybe feel like we can't accomplish, and we might make an excuse. Hey, I can't get this degree because I don't have money. But you could start by daydreaming. And if that daydream makes you become obsessive, makes you become passionate, makes you become driven, then that's helpful. But if that daydream turns into a nightmare, then it could lead you to another daydream. So that's where I think it's useful, because there's many chances. many doors out there where that can open. Daydreaming allows you to hop around, and then when you want to sit on something, then that sets a path to your goals.
Do you ever give yourself a limit, though, for daydreaming? Like, okay, I've daydreamed at least an hour today, and I think I've reached my limit. Now I'm going to get back to something that's more linear.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think I do it subconsciously. I think it happens. That's why I think it's a little bit different than meditation, because you designate a certain time. Maybe I do it so much that I don't even know. I could be washing the dishes, and then though I'm washing the dishes and getting it done, I just went into Ethiopia, and the Ethiopia just opened up this new type of bread that I want to discover while I'm washing dishes. It's so. I don't think you could do it enough. Maybe I'll go there. I'll go the opposite. I was like, until it hinders your goal, I think you need to keep exercising that muscle, just like walking or breathing or doing things. And if it helps you reach goals, then it's useful. If it doesn't, that means it's an excuse, and that's a fine line, I think, to walk. So, and that's the practice, and that's going to be everyone's journey to go, hey, I've been daydreaming. That's why I'm not getting anywhere. I've been daydreaming. Oh, that's why I'm here. So it's that half glass half full, half empty kind of thing. So it's going to be up to each individual to kind of figure out if it's for them, or if they're doing it too much.
You mentioned you liked the writer Charles Bukowski, and I have a quote here from his 1989 book Hollywood, and I'll change the wording a little bit just to clean it up, but I believe he said, people became so used to seeing crap on film that they no longer realized it was crap. Do you feel that way about movies today?
He's a straight shooter, isn't he? So, it's funny. After completing my film, first feature, and it's such a miracle to create anything, to get anything done. I'm very bad at critiquing or criticizing, because whether it's crap or Oscar worthy or just magnificent, that's again up to the audience. As a creator, all you can do is hope that you got out what was inside out there. For me, movies that are, hey, this one not better than the other. I just enjoy them all, because it's just someone's sweat and tears that went through it. I tend to look at that more of it, and sorry to disappoint Charles, but I don't kind of I'm not that controversial to say that it's crap. I don't have that. I don't think I have that authority, because I make a lot of crap.
It goes back to, what you were talking about, hand-holding the audience versus being too abstract. Would you say a lot of tentpole movies are hand-holding, and maybe some people want that?
Yeah, and that's the taste. And I remember, I don't know if I was in school or someone said, hey, if you want to make a lot of money, shoot for the middle. So, but there's a place for everything. I always think about that funny thing about 10% of us like black licorice, and why does black licorice hang around all the time? But if I could ever have a career like black licorice, I'll be very happy. I don't have to please everyone. Just sometimes, your work isn't for everyone. But sometimes you want to go for that joyride. You can't watch $1 Million Baby 3 times in a row, and it's like, it's great, but it's brutal. But maybe you just want to go for a joyride, and every medium, every art has that. You know, I can't eat rich tomahawk ribeye or something like that. I'm going to get gout, or every day. But I could eat pizza every day. You know, but then there's levels of that. So I know I'm talking a little bit weird and abstract of it. So yes, big Hollywood films has a big place because people enjoy it. Artsy art house films, people enjoy that too. It's just giving people the opportunity to see them. I think that's more important, and then everyone can, whether marketed differently or what, but that's a different conversation to say who's doing what. But it just takes. But you think about it, look at all the films that win the Oscars now and stuff. It's all, you know, Moonlight, Parasite, very, you know, prestige fare. It's, you know, so we need it all. I think we need it all.
Do you think each group has their own strong opinions, literary, music, film, and there's just so many talking heads arguing about what's right, what's wrong?
Yeah, I think because because everyone's passionate and gets opinionated, and everyone feels strongly about a situation. Maybe because I lived in a household full of people where I always had to listen to everyone first and understand, and I've always like tried to be diplomatic in a lot of different ways, and that's helped. But now, as you try to get, you know, more firm and more confident, you can't always please everyone. You are going to do things for yourself, and sometimes that's going to rub people wrong. So when you have all these people, whether it's in the music, that, you know, hey, so and so's this, you know, this is like that. You know, this work is too much like the Coen brothers, or Coen brothers stink, or blah blah blah. And that's great. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and that's the beauty of discourse. I think what happens is when the vitriol kind of gets the fire going, you know, I think that's the thing when it becomes personal. But in terms of like each industry, I think everyone should be passionate what they root for. It's like sports. Like you got Dallas Cowboy fans versus the Steelers fans. Everyone likes their thing, you know. So you pick your tribe and you push for it, and then you know, just, you know, some folks feel like they need to be missionaries. So
when you sit down to write a story, do you start with a treatment or an outline?
now each process has been a little bit different for me for each one. I've done quite a bit of one with treatments and outlines, but they're very useful. But what I found more useful is the we talked about before, the movie days. That's helped me give it a structure. But I would come with an idea, and sometimes it depends on each script. Sometimes I'll let it flow and just kind of I'll have an ending, and I'll have a image, and we'll start from there. But then maybe 1 month later, I'll start an outline because I'm stuck, you know. So, but I like to be flexible in that in my routine, just depending on, because some stories come out. I think it's like writing. I can only imagine if it's like writing music. Some songs, you always hear those great songs where it's Dolly Parton doing something like 9 to 5 in like 2 minutes or something like that, or like someone, I just woke up in the middle of the night and just wrote this masterpiece. Sometimes it pours out, sometimes it's laborious, but again, so I think those are useful treatments and outlines. So definitely.
By the way, that was a great movie too.
Yeah. Oh, 9 to 5?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great movie. With your film, All Roads to Perla, it started with an idea from seeing a paper bag or a plastic bag?
Yeah, well, I had an image of that. I also had an image of the Texas landscape. And I had the feeling of this wide open space at night, and I knew that one of the characters was a wrestler. And when you're wrestling season, I used to wrestle. Sometimes you would sleep in a plastic bag, and then I had these images of plastic. There's a plastic bag hanging on a tree. Sometimes when you drive around in the desert and things like that, or out there, you'll see that. So it started with the landscape, seeing plastic, and then having that feel of. Then I thought of plastic body bags. Then I thought, which was all because of daydreaming. You think you drive and your date. Well, I told you not to drive and daydream, but I was on the road a lot for my assignments, and you're covering Texas. I covered like 5,000 miles in 21 days to do like 18 shoots one time, and that was how All Roads to Perla started coming out. Is because I saw all these places and faces, and I didn't want that to end. So I would just combine them and create my own story.
And were you doing a full loop around Texas, the outskirts?
I did. I've probably seen more of Texas than Texans. I've been to Eagle Pass, Brownsville, Midlands, Pecos, everything for just all different types of assignments. So, and that's why that landscape to me had so much like mystery, so much history, and it was just like, wow, this is unbelievable. It's like you hear stories of cowboys and this, but to actually see that land, it was awesome. And the people and the culture, you can't. Yeah, I was definitely inspired by that, and then I did, and then I was sent down to Houston to do a story, and then that tied in to what I was doing. And in Houston, there's this 2-mile stretch where there are these massage parlors, illegal massage parlors, and then I got to go on a raid with sheriff. So I would have all these like interesting, heavy assignments, whether it's immigration to that to exoneree. Michael Morton, he was accused of killing his wife, served like 22 years in death row, but later found out that he didn't do it. So all these human interest stories, I wanted to understand what that was all about. We make these choices, and sometimes those choices aren't good enough, and then we have to live with the consequences, good or bad. So that's what happened in my time driving around in Texas.
And how did you feel, let's say you get out at a road stop, you go to use the bathroom at an older gas station, or you stop for a bite to eat at a cafe? I mean, like, how was that? You're just interacting with...
It's interesting being an Asian American and trying to going around in different, like I think I went to the least populated county once, population like 10 or something like that. It's cool. It's cool. It's again, I felt like I was like in a movie all the time. I felt like it was, but it's real. It's awesome. It's the people, the culture. Again, I keep talking about that. But when I would stop, it's sort of like when you get so used to thinking what could happen, like if these walls could talk, who lived here 20 years ago, 40 years ago, what family, it's the same thing. What happened this rest stop? What happened this single family home? Who owned it before? So your brain just goes all over the place. And I think working as a photographer, I was able to catch it with one frame, but now as like you could write these stories and just make it up, like, oh, this is what happened. Fred walked out the door, got hit by a truck, his son's out for revenge. There. Okay, now let's have fun and let's spend next 2 hours writing about that. Who hit him in the truck? Was there a motive? what Fred do to the other person. It's that's kind of neat, and that helps with if you daydream a lot, because then you can just go, oh, what happens over there? Well, maybe Fred, had it coming. Well, that's what the mayor said. Well, the sheriff was out to him. It's just so you could keep going. It's fascinating.
Interesting. Being on the road, I think we behave differently too. Let's say I took a Greyhound across country one time as a kid, and if you're in your own car versus you're in waiting in line at an airport or something, you seeing all these people and you're imagining what their lives are like, and they're looking at you thinking the same thing, and it's just, I don't know, we're just in a different mindset, I think, when we travel, even just domestically, so anyway, there was
when you're seeing, like, I would walk when I was living in New York or anywhere, even here, and you walk by so many people and you're just like, I wonder are we ever going to meet again? Then you're like, I wonder how many photos I'm in the background that that I don't know of, and things like that. And then you realize how many people are in this world, and then you realize how many stories there are. But then you're like, we're all human. We have these same emotions. How do we tap into that? And that's why when you hear music and songs that could move a whole country, a whole world, that is amazing. To write something in 3 minutes, to have something play in 3 minutes, and it just moves everyone. Mozart or anything like that. And Elvis, but
Beatles.
So, which means we're connected in a certain way. We're connected with emotions. So I think when we travel, though we see different things, different lands, different people, we're still connected with those human emotions and think, that's what the fun part is as a creator. So I grew up I'm from Laos. My grandmother came to the States in 1986. She didn't know any English. So, and my Lao is not the greatest. So it's for us to communicate there's other ways. Maybe that's why I like filmmaking or photography. It was other ways to communicate. I would have to translate General Hospital to her and why Luke and Laura got married and things like that in Lao, and it was funny. So when you with another language and you got to find other ways to communicate, maybe that I got so into visuals, into sounds. So those are things that could express things versus literally I am sad. I'm telling you I'm sad versus like a frown. So that kind of stuff. So it's neat.
Is it important for you to know the ending before you start writing your screenplays?
I mean, I would love to know the ending all the time. It would be awesome. Sometimes I have it, and sometimes it changes. I would love to know as many parts of the puzzle as I can. Sometimes you discover it, and it goes another way, and I think that's the beauty of sitting down and chipping things away, because it might make more sense. A lot of times it anchors things, and having an ending where you're concrete about it helps, and so. But then you might fall in love with the characters, and you don't want it to end that way. So, again, trying to be flexible with that is good in my opinion. But knowing the ending would be awesome. And sometimes I have that in my head, and then you play around with the themes, and then you follow the themes, and hopefully you could direct everything towards the end. So that would be my process. I don't know if it works all the time.
But as a rule, it sounds like you don't always have to know the ending before you begin something.
Yeah, I think so. It would be very helpful, and it would just help guide. But I think you have a gist of your story, and then if you have that gist, then you probably could get to the ending, quicker than if you don't have that.
With All Roads to Perla, did you know the ending as you began?
I had an idea of an ending. Now, knowing how to tie it all up, it took me a while. I remember I did have, like, I know how I wanted to end, but how it, but how it ended was still up in the air because there were so many loose parts. I think one of the things that I've found, even with the script in the early stages, is I don't know if anyone out there has a similar problem, is your storylines. Sometimes you got to wrangle them back and have that fit. And that was the tricky part, you know, and not make it seem so forced and things, and massage it correctly, and still get your message across, or you know what the story's about. So yeah, when I started, I had an idea what's going to happen, but you know, without giving anything away, it was guided, but the little details was harder, you know.
Maybe help me understand that. So is it almost like if you were going to search for Halloween decorations, but then you go down this rabbit hole and now you're searching fall, you know, you're going, and then you're like, you know what, wait, my original plan was to look for Halloween decorations. Is that what you're talking about, where you have to wrangle it back in?
Yeah, like, let's say, for instance, we had skeletons, we had zombies, and we have ghosts. But only the ghost is at the end. You know, what happened to the skeleton and the zombies without it becoming? Did we forget them at the aisle 14, or you know, like, or did they disappear, or did the ghost take it? You know, so if you knew that the ghost is the one that's there at the end because you know in the front yard, then maybe you want the zombies in the back later. You have the elements, but you thought like you wanted the ghost to be the one that is the main highlight. I think that's what I'm kind of talking about more of, like, I have an idea. I want the ghost to be the guy out there, but what do I do with the rest of the crew? That.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And do we really need to know how much and why you've left the skeleton in the aisle 4 or 14, whatever?
That goes back to our discussion of, do you want to handhold more, or do you want to leave it a little bit more obscure, So do we leave a foot out and you see the skeleton foot in aisle 14, or do you want the entire leg out, or do you want the entire body out so you could see that skeleton got killed at aisle 14, that kind of stuff. So that's what's, I think, what I'm talking about in terms of, like, have an ending, have a feeling ending. How do I get there with all these other things that are happening? But then sometimes you go, you know what? Actually, the skeleton should be the one that's at the end. So that could happen. But with All Rose and Perla, I had a feeling what I wanted. My challenge was, like, I knew the last page. My challenge was the 5 pages prior to that last page. That kind of thing of, tying things up and getting it right, and how do we get there to make it kind of, dramatic and suspenseful, things like that.
And how long did it take you to write the full script, the first draft?
I started it like 10 years ago, the first draft. Maybe a good draft afterwards, maybe like 8 months or so. And then rewrite more of it. So I don't even remember now. It's like so kind of like long ago. But I do remember when I was starting it, because I was like, I'm gonna try to write my, I wrote one feature. I was like, I'm gonna do this one. And then I got stuck, and I took one character and wrote a short film on it. And that short film became my first short film, called Balloons Go Pop. of it. So I used it as a way to kind of like have a sort of like a sounding board. I didn't have the pressure of like, oh, I need to finish it in 6 months or 9 months. I was just going through exercises of it and trying to figure my way out, even dialogue, even all the elements of screenwriting. So I was trying to just get better at it. And then that over time, I went back to the story and shaped it up until I felt confident that there was something there.
And that was a 10-year process?
From script to screen. From script to final shooting draft, probably 6 years, yeah.
Okay, so you knew at that point then, this is something I'm committed to. If this story still interests me that many years later?
Oh, I think so. If you ask my wife, and I think I was so stupid. I was like, hey, if I die, could you make this film, please? It's so dumb. I don't know, I just got so like, I don't know, I don't even know why. It's just like, I just wanted to finish, you know? I just wanted to finish it because it took so much to get it going, and then I just didn't want it to sit in my drawer or sit in my laptop. So, you know, I enjoyed the characters, and I just wanted to kind of see it come alive. And again, that's a selfish thing to, oh, I wrote something, I want to see it come alive, that kind of thing. And that's what I was driven at, because like I said, I love to quit things when it doesn't feel right, and this never not felt right. So I just kept going and going, and even though there were many moments of you know, it's brutal. It's a brutal thing, and I want to kind of and not say there's a myth of things. There's a brutal stretch of each of the process to get it done. What are you doing with your life? How's this happening? How's the finance going? How are you going to make rent? What are you going to do this? What if you don't get to this festival? What if this distribute? You know, all these kinds of weird things that you don't think about when you first start writing and going, oh, fade in. You don't think, then we're like, oh, it just leads you on. So the journey has been quite interesting. And, you know, but sometimes when you see these things, you always see some person, all of a sudden they have a movie, and all of a sudden they get another movie and all this. And it just so happens, because I was there and going, how did this happen? You know? It's like, but my thought was, if someone else can do it, let me deconstruct this. I could figure this out and do it. So my only thing is just trying to figure it out how to do it. So it's like, I found one side of the Rubik's Cube. That's what happened, and here we are, just, you know, ready, sadistically enough, ready to try to do another one. So there you have it.
Is it really that selfish, though, to want to make it? I mean, going back to what we talked about, it's also selfish to want to be promoted in corporate America. So
yeah.
Is it really selfish?
Maybe that's me just kind of like make me feel better. Because in the end, it is a lot of like trying to, you know, play to your own ego, and figuring out and going, why do you want to do this? You know, because I think it's a very honest question to ask yourself in the mirror. Why do you want to do this? It's almost because that's all you kind of want to do, and maybe feel like you're somewhat good at. Not because if someone's telling you that you're good at it, is because you feel that it feels like you're good at it. You know, it's hard, because it's like you try to enter competitions, and you try to do this and get validated in so many different ways. I think I got so rejected so many times that I didn't want. I was like, screw validation. I love doing it. I'm gonna keep doing it. You know, it's like, but what does that entail? And when is it enough? So I'm still trying to figure that out, as I go. Is when is it enough? When do I have to write? How many scripts do I have to write? How many movies that would make me happy? So then I'll be like, It's, again, just trying to make a sustainable career. That's just the goal, my goal. So that's where I'm at this point, and trying to. Sometimes it's a curse because you're like, you wish I wish I would have gotten that fourth more rejection to go. Okay, now I'm becoming a marketing assistant or something like that, and you're like, that'd be so much easier. Gosh, but now you're just like, why am I cursed to kind of put myself and people I love in this kind of like brutal kind of journey of filmmaking, but then it's a privileged situation to cry about creating. So,
Van, off camera, as we were taking a quick break, you said something about possibly why not just do this as a hobby, filmmaking, screenwriting. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, I ask myself that every day. It's like sometimes it's just easier or more precious when you keep something to yourself as a hobby. It's like this going at it and making it a living. It's it's not all 100% being creative. It's like it's 85% business, 15% being creative, and you have to be okay with that. Sometimes, and that is the trick that could lead to that cynicism. And things that happen. So so I would ask, I should just keep writing because I enjoy it, but what's that need? What's that need? So, I ask myself that every day. Sometimes I wish it was a hobby, but I'm too stubborn and too, crazy to let a sleeping dog lie or something like that. So I keep pushing ahead.
Can you describe your typical writing day?
Yeah. So I said I find that I get a lot of good stuff down earlier. My brain just is more lucid, I think, because it maybe is because I'm coming off of like a sleep. So 6, 7 to 9 a.m. is where I think I write my best. That's me personally, and I would just tackle that and try to write. Some days I could get 4 pages. Some days I'll get half a page. But when I'm finishing up a script, I write till like 2 or 3 from that morning. So try to get a good 8 hours in. Sometimes I'll stare at the page, or I'm researching, or I'm talking things out or writing out. But when I'm finished working on a script, I try to do that a good amount, like a good steady amount each day. The rewrites, when I'm doing rewrites, so after just recently, we just did a read through, so we'll have it read through, see how it sounds. Because sometimes when you read a script, you read it faster or slower. So when you have someone who just reads it out, you could get a better time. If it's the scene's too long, if everyone's twiddling their thumb and going, "Hey, let's wrap this up," that's when you could tell if you want to cut it up more, make it faster. So we'll do a read through, and then we'll have notes, and then I'll go through, wake up, and send some emails. But then I'll go through the notes and knock it out, and go, "Hey, we need to add a little more humor here," or "Hey, we got to do this," or "Cut this out," or "This is a 3-page scene. We need to trim it down." So I would work those angles. So again, the earlier the better for me. So I could, it doesn't seem like my brain works a little bit better that way.
When you do the read through or you have someone else do it, are they reading with no emotion?
Yeah, they're just reading it through, so they don't have to act it out. Yeah, they could just read scene headings, seeing this, and sometimes they'll get into an act, but they don't have to be. It doesn't have to be like a table read of everything, but it just go interior, Jacob's kitchen, so and so comes in, and they'll just read it normal. Yeah, so we could see the pacing, and then if there's a issue where they want to go, it's like, hey, does he really say yes ma'am right now? He said it 3 yes ma'ams three pages ago or something. I don't think he's going to say yes ma'am now. So you could really kind of work on dialogue too, and that this sounds a little bit off or forced, so everyone would have like an idea, and me as a writer, I'll take the notes and go, and that helps because when you guys are reading in your head, sometimes you get stuck, so it's nice to kind of hear the words out. It doesn't have to be acted out, but that gives you a better time frame. So I recommend that if you could get even a friend after you finish something, have them read through. The last read through took us we started at 11 and finished at like 4, because you're going through each page, each word. We would stop, and go, oh, what do you think about that? Things like that. So that really helped.
There's a new job description in the pandemic. You can
Yeah.
have a job as just a reader.
Yeah, just read it through.
On Zoom or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Because, it's better to have someone versus the writer read it, or, director, so you could sit there, have your team of collaborators, a producer, director, whoever, and so they could hear it out.
Once you start writing a screenplay, how often do you write? How often do you go to write it? So page 1 of something, you're getting up at 6 in the morning maybe, mm-hmm. You're excited, and then maybe you're stopping at 9 a.m. depending on your schedule, and then how often are you going back to it to finish?
During the
day? During the course of however long it takes you to finish, so that whether it's a year, 10 years?
I just finished one. It took me about 4 months, and I spent every day pretty much at it for about average of like 4 to 5 hours a day on it. So that one, yeah, so it depends. Like I said, the all roads to Perla, look how long it took. But now as you get better and you're more confident of what you want and the structure of the scenes and the things like that. And I had in my head of like what Stephen King always says of like, you don't wait for inspiration, you just get to work, So even if I'm staring at the page or something, I'm zoned in, I'm focusing on it. So I wanted to kind of just keep chiseling it. And sometimes you get great breakthroughs, and then you'll write a good amount. But it's different for each one. For the last couple ones, I'll be disciplined on that. Like I just try to treat myself like an athlete. If I had to go do this if in a day, what would so-and-so, I hear, let's say like, I just read something, it was just on Jimmy Butler from Miami Heat. He said he was up at 3 or 4 a.m. practicing or something like that. So I wanted to implement those kind of like practices. They always say like, I try to do things that you don't want to do because they're usually good for you. And then, so it's like, I don't want to wake up every day and do this, but if you love it, if you're challenged by it, it's not that painful. So I'm fortunate to kind of go, oh, awesome. I'm gonna work on this. Meanwhile, we're also trying to run, commercials and things like that. So you have to balance kind of different things and stuff, and doing that. And you might not have certain weeks where you can, but I'll try to at least slide something in. Maybe it's 2 a.m. to 4, afterwards. But at least I'll try to put the hours in for writing. Yeah.
Wow, so you're up writing occasionally at 2 a.m.?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yeah, because you're just so kind of addicted to it, because you're in the if you're just in the cusp of breaking through the scene, and just get it out, and then you could come back later and elevate it, and just and texturize it and do this, but you're in a roll, and if you keep getting rolls, then you'll get to that 90-page, 100-page, and you're like, I finished, and let it sit, and now you could work on the rewrite afterwards.
Does writing energize you or exhaust you?
Both. They just kind of hit you, and I get really excited when I could create that world. That gets me really excited when I get the characters alive. It exhausts me because I want it to go faster than where it's going. It's almost like Christmas. You want Christmas to come right away, and you want to just tear through the presents. But it's and you come on all sorts of problems, and you just wish that you could figure it out right away. And sometimes you need that break, though. It's like, how come I didn't think about it yesterday, but today is so clear. This is what has to happen, and that's exciting when I get that. It's frustrating when I couldn't think about it that day. The answer to that, that question. Oh, that's a great line. That leads to this, or maybe I should add this action to it. So it does energize me, but it's definitely frustrating.
What is the most difficult part of the writing process for you?
I like to always try to be honest of the ability of what I can do, and you strive to be the best you can, and I think the most difficult part is because you want it to be so good. You're trying to figure out ways, and there's so many elements to that. It's the story, it's the dialogue, it's the characters, and how that all fits in. It's putting it all together. It's the difficult part is to make each scene so good that there is no bad scene. So if there is a bad scene, you have to get that scene out. So that how do we get it? It's everything's so good. That's what we're all trying to figure out, right? How do we get the reader to turn the page, to keep turning the page? It's when it gets boring, when it gets not interesting, when there's not a voice, when the characters are doing the same thing. We've seen this. It's so it's hard to find that creativity, that juice to kind of, you might have one great scene, but then the other three are average. How do I get those other three from a 3 to a 5? How do I get it to a 5? And that's the frustrating part. You're like, dang, is it the story? Or dang, is it the character itself? Or is it my stupid dialogue? It's like, that's the hardest part of it all, the frustrating part. And that's what keeps you going, because you got one good scene. It keeps, you're asking about what energizes you. Oh man, that was great. It felt good. It was going. Then the next scene, it comes to a dead halt and stop and what did I just write? It makes no sense. It's boring. It's cliche. It's now or never. It's I love you. Versus it's easy to say show it on screen, show the thing, but to actually do it that's the craft and beauty of what all these great screenwriters are trying to do. And it's you see Michael Jordan shooting the basketball, but you don't see him all those years of practice. So we just try to get to work and craft the scene as best as we can and get better at it and finish the story and hop on to the next one.
Did you watch Last Dance?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Behind this, I always love seeing everyone's process of how to do things.
Right. Right, especially someone who's very tenacious and always wants to, and knows that that's something in him that he almost can't stop himself.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
Yeah. So, it's, so you could have it, you could have a talent, you could have all of that, you could have a lot of different things, but I think what's hard to teach is that obsessiveness, Why do you want to wake up? It's easy to sleep, easy to put it off to the next day. But because of the pandemic and stuff, we're all going through those questions. What, like of things. What's important? What do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? How much time do we have? Things like that. I think for me, it was I made a decision. I lost my mom through breast cancer 15 years ago. So that was the launch of me going, I'm just going to try it and try something that, I don't know what's going to happen. Because it's easy to try things when you know what's going to happen. And still, so I was like, I think being with her for those last couple months of just trying to go and giving her saying, go ahead. It was just, I was like, oh my gosh, I could go ahead and, go ahead. Really? I never had that kind of freedom from a parent, her, especially her, because she wanted me to, do other things. But then she finally knew, and I loved that. I was like, I'm going to take this and run and see how far I could get, So that's what kind of helped start it all, So my sort of pandemic hit 15 years ago of going like, oh, we're not given tomorrow, and I'm going to try as hard to get better each day because I like doing it, I'm not going to waste time. I'm not going to waste a year if I'm in a job that I didn't like because I'm not guaranteed next year. I kept that in my head, so that's why I had this thing about time, just because of my mom, and so that helped me kind of like appreciate time and appreciate good and bad things. It's not to say I want to have everything being great, but it's just I want to live life. I want to experience it all. I just don't want to waste time being unhappy. I'd like to be unhappy because I can feel it. I just want to spend 2 years on it. Sometimes I feel like I'm living for two people. So you want to experience everything, and you want it. It's just as simple as going outside or taking the trash out. So all the things that I would convince myself that are hard or because I'm lazy or what, I was like, even doing that, I should just be grateful for, going walking outside, doing this. So if I have an opportunity to write a script, that's luxurious. So I'm gonna swing for the fences because we're not given tomorrow, pretty much.
With your screenwriting, Van, do you try to be original or do you try to give the audience what you think they would want?
I think I try to come up with the original concept, and you want to start out with that, and because that's sort of what drives you. I know they say, hey, think about what the audience is, or think about your audience, what's your genre, who's watching this, who's doing that. But I think you start writing the story that motivates you. And what gets you through, because you're gonna have to live with this for a long time in terms of like producing it or in terms of like writing it, and then if you go on to try to get it produced and made, it has to be something that you're proud of or that you want to go through that journey with. So if that idea is an original idea for you, and at least it's for me, I start with that. So all the scripts that I have written is basically from original thoughts, and I don't even think about the budget and stuff like that. Maybe because the stories I write just tend to following the same thing, but it's not super high concept. It's not out in space. It's not this. It's just like grounded in what's happening here in humanity. But when I start out something, I come it from a original perspective.
Do you think you could be okay with being a writer for hire or something where it may not be your style, it may be too hand-holding of a story, but you're being sort of like, okay, paid to do it, even though it might not be something you would want to watch? Would you have trouble with that?
This is like me going through, like, if I'm actually writing, sticking to the themes. My original thought of all this was to have a sustainable career. So to answer that, yeah, I would do it. I'm not a young buck coming out of 25 years old and having the luxury of a lot of time and doing this, but I think the more you can do anything, the better you get at it, you always hear, now I sort of understand why people might complain, why actors take certain roles and things like that. Everyone can't be Daniel Day-Lewis and do these. Maybe you just want to be a role that's goofy and fun. Maybe I want to test my chops on something different. I'm not, we talked about athletes and stuff. You want to come back to each season with new things that you learn. Everything, whether if I ever get a chance at a studio world writing something that's, that, I'm going to learn something from that. You could always take that back, and then I could always do it as a hobby, my own stuff later, so that kind of stuff. So things like that. So I'm not opposed to that if that is an opportunity. Or, I'm not one of those, I'm going to be an auteur and everything that's going to happen. I'm just trying to take it one film at a time. If it happens, there'll be, I think that would be a good problem to have, to make that decision.
I always wonder about like actors who get these commercials where they become these spokespersons for like well over a decade.
Yeah.
And how do they feel about that? I mean, if it provides a nice lifestyle for someone and they feel a sense of satisfaction, maybe they weren't the leading role on General Hospital or something, but but then some people go to the sellout term, and I think most of us would probably, they'd go with the steady paycheck.
Yeah. If we think percentage-wise of things, and you want, how many, like you said, how many of us can be Paul Thomas Anderson or Quentin Tarantino? How many people are even behind the scenes doing stuff that we don't even know about, that no one does, that has to punch up a script or do this or do whatever you have. But if you're in it, it beats other things. So, like, definitely it would be something. It's not like something you always want to do, and like you want to build leverage, but also you want to be working.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
How has All Roads to Perla changed your writing process?
I think since it's one of the earlier ones, and seeing how it could be developed into it. I think now I'm trying to get tighter in my storytelling. You're trying to, again, back to an athlete, analogy, an athlete, what could you work on? I think it's for writing for film, I need to be tighter for 90 minutes. For All Roads to Perla and other things, I think there's a world where you can have it like an episodic limited series, so you could dive into the characters more, I think that's what I've kind of learned. If I have a situation or an idea that involves tons of characters, I probably would start out writing it as a pilot. Now, if I have like a pretty great idea that I could tell within a film space of like 90 minutes, I'll switch to film. I think that's how writing that All Roads to Perla has helped me kind of divide the two areas, I believe, just to keep them separate. Because each one has its own sort of, format and expectations.
When you say tighter, do you mean that you feel sometimes the story will meander and you're trying to keep it on course?
Yeah. I think for me personally, I think because I write very visually, I think it's too flowery. And I write as a writer-director, so there's a lot of things I'm putting on the page that I don't need to, because I know I'm going to direct it, but I like to write it and create it for folks. But if I was purely writing as a writer, I get a lot tighter, because I want to experience that in terms of like not to be, to explain things and not have as much, camera direction or setting things up and flowery. I want it tighter so I could turn the page. That would be my goal now. Before, I think the goal before was writing something with heart. Now I think maintaining that, but condensed. Yeah.
Van, if we were going to get a 7-minute lesson from you on writing a screenplay, so I've never written a screenplay before, but I had this movie idea. Can you help me write that screenplay? In 7 minutes? Not the actual screenplay in 7 minutes, but instruct me on how.
I'm not an authority, but if I was asking myself that when I was starting, what would I say to my younger self in 7 minutes? How to start this? What I would first off say, what's the story? What's the genre? And why do you want to tell it? In 3 words, give me 3 words about the story. It could be just three words. Revenge, another word. So we'll start with those words. Then give me a character. Who do you want in the character? Then I'll go ask, okay, where does this take place? Get the character. What's the character's job? What does that person do? And what does that character want to do? And then develop the world, develop the character, and why do you want to tell that story? And we'll start from there and then go back, and then just even if it's 1 page or 2 page or 3 pages, write something about what this character does in that world, with their job and what they want to do. And then once you have that, then we could flesh it out a little bit more. And then maybe, like you said, start an outline. What do they need? What's their obstacles? And then we add more characters in. But I would probably start with who the main character is and the world they're in.
So then just quickly, I'll give you my character is a waitress at a Greasy Spoon diner off Route whatever in Texas.
Okay.
She's 40. She makes decent wages there. It's not really an exciting job, but the owner of a local plant has said, I will make a deal with you. And that deal is I want you to listen to what my employees say when I'm not there, and you're going to report back, and I'm going to put you on payroll.
Okay. All right. Seems like there's a lot of conflict. There's some sort of like moral, dilemma as well, and you got a character, and then you could explore the routes of, is she a good-hearted waitress? Does she want to become the owner of this, take out the boss, or does she want to fight for who they're listening into? So there's different routes in that. So it starts to what's the makeup of this or hero or protagonist, because they could be like the Joker. He didn't have to be the best guy, but what was this person doing? And so at least you have that, and you have that to start, and then throw a couple obstacles, and then and see what happens, because it could lead somewhere else, because you just have an idea, you don't have it yet formed. So run with it, run with something, run with a direction, and maybe write it, and then that might spur something forward. Hence, tying back to the daydreaming, because you don't know what it could lead, because you're saying, oh, actually, she's doing this because she wants to get to New York, and because you know why? Because she gave up a daughter, and now that she wants to go see that because she only has 6 months left to live, and she wants to make peace with that daughter, and tell her things that she wished that someone told her. Something
I like
that.
it.
So that's the association disconnect, and you could go, okay, is that the story you want to tell, or do you want it a drama, or do you want it a genre, a horror film? So you stick to that, and that's where it'll lead.
And what was the last part? I'm asking myself, why do I want to write this?
Yeah, why? I think you should also ask why do you want to write this? It's a question because it's going to drive the narrative, because that's the question, and the answer is your screenplay, because it's I think there's something in that film that you create that you're trying to investigate. So why do you want to write this? What's going on? Are you trying to talk about unrequited love? Or are you going to try to talk about haunted past? Or are you going to try to talk about a new way out, a new living, hope and things like that? So why do you want to talk about that? And it generally has to do with sometimes what's happening in your life, right now, and it's because it's easier because you could feel like, oh, I feel that I want to talk about anxiety, the loss of jobs, the loss of the economy, being a new homeowner, not knowing if I can make that. How could I synthesize that feeling into the script of this girl in the diner? How to get that feeling, anxiety in there, what she's going through, So that's how it would kind of help usher it along. And then just write your first draft and come up with an image. You already got the image, diner. Maybe the opening shot is a bottle of ketchup. Who knows? And it falls on the floor. And she picks it up and sweeps it away. And then that could be an image, a theme that you could hold on to throughout, sparingly. So you're not totally spoon-feeding the audience of, why is that a ketchup? Is she part of the Hunt's family? Who knows,
Do I know the ending? Do I need to know it?
What if you write 3 endings, put in a hat and pick one, and go from there? So if a lot of times, I think for me, I have problems deciding. So if there's a course already set, and you have a couple of different things, you could try it. But then if it's a course you don't like, you veer back. Sort of like, maybe that's what I do in my life. It's like, I'll try it. If I don't like it, I'll veer back. So it's sort of like that process for me for writing. I'll go down on a road. Oh my gosh, that dialogue's too cheesy. I don't need that character. I don't need to talk to the other waitress. I needed to talk to the mailman that came and gave her a package that came from New York, or something like that,
So then the 3 alternate endings could be, she makes her money, she leaves that town, she doesn't look back, she sees her daughter, she tells her, I'm sorry. She has a sense of peace, the daughter has a sense of peace. The other ending could be, she meets a good-looking drifter, and he's a smooth talker, and he says, darling, I want to take you to New York. I want to see Mama meet her baby. And they go, she packs. He says, hang on, I'm going to get smokes at this gas station. He robs it. She doesn't know that. She's in the car, now she's an accomplice. He gets arrested, she gets arrested, she goes to prison. She dies there. Third, she's too scared to go. The daughter says, don't come. and she ends up staying at this diner. And nothing much happens to her, and she just kind of stews in the regret.
Yeah, those are great. Great 3 things, see? So, even with that, we just spitballed in 2-3 minutes and just write it. A lot of times, we'll just sit there and wait for 2 months or 3 months. Oh, this is not working. I gotta research this. I gotta do that. But if you stick to those feelings, I'm already thinking about the girl. Oh, what if she came to the diner finally? And then, and just different things. So that's what that's sort of what happens, and you kind of like go with it. But you never know where it goes unless you try it. So
yeah, that's good. If she shows up.
Yeah. So,
right.
Why'd you give me up?
Right.
Then you have that awesome, or it could be really like that, scene from the wrestler when the daughter comes and talks to Mickey Rourke, and that powerful exchange of like, well, things like that. So,
right.
Or it could be a thriller that she comes back and poisons her.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I like it. Now I want to write this thing.
Yeah.
That's good. That helped. I liked throwing the 3 things in there, and then some of the other ideas I wouldn't have thought about the daughter in New York.
No, you don't. So now when you do that, that's the fun part. When you start, then you read it out loud. Then you're like, things open up. So that's why I think it's important to not be beholden to what you've done. Because it's like, you should feel really good that you've already wrote it, it's out there, but if that scene needs to go, it needs to go, and a new one can be born. That's it. That's the whole thing, and not be so precious with these scenes, because I think that's the scary part, because at least for me, I'll talk about me again, sometimes you feel like you can't do it, like it won't be as good, or it won't work, or it's you haven't thought about it, because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, and you brought up stuff that I wasn't thinking of, and then I liked it better, what you brought up, and
you brainstorm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the title of this?
Of let's see. I love titles. That's the hardest. That's one that kind of. What do you feel the title should be?
Waiting? That might be too cliche. Sorry. But it's also, it's not just what she does, but her daughter is waiting for an answer.
Yeah.
She's waiting to start her life. So, as cliche as it sounds, there's many meanings to that.
Yeah, I probably would. It takes me longer with the title, because that's sort of what would drive it. Could be, is it more about the daughter or the mom?
Good question.
So,
Right. I think it's more about the mom.
Yeah. So pick her middle name, and then
Jolene. She's a Southern gal. She's a Southern belle. Maybe she won a beauty contest when she was younger, but she got stuck in this town. And
Jolene sounds great.
Yeah.
I think that's a good sounding name. Or you could add, or you could as you go, maybe it's a letter that a letter that she had slipped for the baby whenever she had, or something like that. Or maybe it's both of their names, Jolene and Izzy.
I like that.
So maybe it's about both of them. So then you couple them up, like Thelma and Louise, and then you have them drive off the cliff.
Sure. Right. And then there's a Brad Pitt character too.
Yeah,
gotta have that one.
You gotta have that, and a dancing scene. Every great movie has a dancing scene.
That's true. Yeah, and every '80s movie had a great singing scene. You've mentioned previously reading a lot of screenplays. Where do you find the screenplays that you read?
Whether it's on the internet, and you just kind of like look for it. Those are like established like screenplays where it's like Leaving Las Vegas or movies that are coming out for Oscars because they would release it by the studios or things like that, or the Blacklist announcements will have that. I also have worked with development for film and entertainment, and where I would cover lots of different screenplays, so I get to see and read tons that aren't produced yet and things like that. So you kind of get a good, or I kind of get a good grasp of what's being out there and what's been done. When you read your favorite screenplays and watch the movies, and I think that's a good start.
Do you watch the movies first, or read the screenplay first, or it varies?
I think it varies, but sometimes I prefer the screenplays because I like to have my own interpretations of that. But there are some that I've read that are just really spot on. But I love reading screenplays. It just kind of flows, and you read enough of them, I guess you could feel. You could really tell the writer's voice. It's cool when you see that and like, oh wow, that really flows. And the way they use alliteration, or there's ways they use their periods, or how they space stuff, or how all these little things. Because there's not much else, but the way you move it is how it's pretty vital. I think that's the craft of it, and being economical in terms of describing things, and it's so true. I keep going back to these cliches of like arrive late and leave early, that kind of stuff that you always hear, and it's hard to do when you're kind of in that world and focus. So that's why it's good to just get that first draft done, and then just chopping, and you feel if you miss it, and then add it back in.
Do you ever read non-professional screenplays?
Yeah. I think, not as much as recently of things, but I've read, just different friends and things like that. Or last couple of years, not as much though. A lot have been just from what's out there. So to answer that question, to be honest, I haven't read many non-professional screenplays the last like 3 years or so. Yeah.
What's the difference between an amateur script and a professional script?
They say it's like the first couple pages, and it's the command of that page, the way you intro a character, the way the world is created, the way that you turn the page. That's it. I don't know how, like, when you read something that makes you want to get up and go to put the popcorn in the microwave or go make a toast, that happens with professional screenplays too. There's a lot. It's hard to keep someone engaged for how many, like an hour and a half to read that thing. So the difference, I would say, is how they get into the characters, build that world, and have unique voices and make you want to care on the page, that you could feel, you could see the movie in your head. I think that's the thing. You've seen something that you haven't before, versus like, oh, this reminds me of that, or this reminds me of Forrest Gump. But I think when we first started, I'm at fault of it too, is because we're being influenced and being inspired by the things that we like, and it comes into our work. But that's why if you stick to the themes, you stick to how you express those, I think you have something more original, because it's your voice, it's connected to you personally. So that's the answer. It's being personal, because it's something personal to this individual that I want to experience, that I see it on the page. Yeah.
And is that going back to what we talked about earlier, is finding the why?
I think so. Yeah, why, You know, it's like, hey, why do I want to write this? Because there's layers of stuff, even if it's an allegory to this or parallels. It's a lot of different things, even if it's about space Martians or even it's a Fast and Furious. There's other things involved, you know. Why? And then when you actually read something that drives you, it's because that person has made these characters come alive, you know, and you want to know what's going to happen. So I think that's the difference, because it's hard to explain, I guess. But when you read it, you're like, I'm going to go make coffee instead. Versus like when you read something, you're like, wait a second, I'm going to read that. Have you guys ever like back even, I took like a lot of English classes, even though I was a business major. I was too lazy to change majors. But I remember reading Jude the Obscure, cut all day, Thomas Hardy book, like just couldn't put it down. It took me a couple of days, but I couldn't stop. Now imagine a script, which is 100 pages. So that's the aim and the goal, to have to write something that someone can't put down. Not everyone, there's going to be a lot of people that hate it, a lot of people that love it, but there will be a person that's going to love it and can't put that down. That's the goal, I think.
Right, Judy Blume books. From,
Yeah.
Couldn't
Just
put them down.
Put them down.
They were all excellent.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you work with actors? And actually, more specifically, how does your process working with actors evolve from the audition to then working with them on set?
Yeah, great. That's the fun part, working with actors. Actors are so talented. You want to create opportunities for them to perform at their highest level, and for our purposes, for All Roads to Perla, there's no rehearsals. They come and just nail it. You know, it's just the way, just how they are. But each actor is different. You know, it's like being a coach again from a team. Each player is motivated in certain ways. Each character is developing certain things. My job as a director, for me, is to provide them a place to try things, to get into that character and to elevate what's on that script. And I think that's the key, to have them add their special sauce to this dish, because even if the way someone says two words or the way their eyes twitch could say a lot, and it's because they're feeling that character and that they're not walking through, they're not just dialing it in. It's because that's what makes them great, you know. It's versus someone who's reading lines. You could feel that's their gift to perform and make that character emote. So as a writer, you try to give them the words to do that, but as a performer and as a director, I just get out of the way and go, hey, let's take another take. That's so easy. Hey, try this. It's a matter of having, a director's, that job is, it's like, it's a taste. You direct things, you say this, but you just got to give the actor that luxury. Some people need something to hold. Some people need this. So you have to know what each actor needs and give that to them, So from audition to screen, again, I was lucky to be working with stellar actors, for the first time professional actors who have been doing this for years. Addison was acting for decades. Dash, Myhawk, decades. So it's me just for them to love the script and run with it, and that's the key. Get that script so they feel like they could add something to it.
So the delivery of lines, little facial micro expression.
Exactly.
Something, twitch in the eye.
Twitch, and here's the best part, that they do it over and over again. exact same way. So when you edit, it's almost seamless. That's a professional, you know, that's what they're giving you, that opportunity in the edit room to use takes that are just great, but they do it in a way where it's just not like my hair is blown this way, or this hair is this, or this shirt, or things, and just that professionalism and understanding what the character needs, but then just delivering in that, you know, in a hot room with no AC.
After 12 hours.
Yeah.
Yep. How does a director build strong relationships with actors?
For a first-time feature director, I mean, I would be nervous. But the only commodity I had was the script. And everyone who was working there liked the script before they liked me. So I had nothing to do with that personally in terms of like me. But for me to gain like the trust of the actors is, I think it was a lot of my training and being a portrait photographer we talked about before is we have to give ourselves and be vulnerable, even to the crew as well, everyone. It's not like I'm going to walk on the set and say I'm Martin Scorsese, you know, or whatever. It's like I'm the least experienced person on set. Thank goodness, because, you know, and just be honest with that. But, you know, but I know the story. I know it inside and out. I'm here to make and have this vision, and I'm here to work with you guys to create something I can't even imagine that's in my head. So you set that out, and hopefully the team follows, and they build, and each day you work for their respect. You work and show it. It doesn't happen the first day, first week. It happens through time, just like relationships. And you know, and I'm one to always, maybe grown up as a people pleaser, so it's harder. I'm like, oh, okay, do you need this or that, or so I'm always on edge. So but I hope to start like that. But it's a fine line too. You want it, you run the ship too. You want to make sure things are going accordingly, and not be a pushover in terms of your vision. You know, and you could take lots of ideas and lots of things, and you'd be dumb not to. But in the end of the day, you have to take all that information. You have to decide what is best for the story. And you get to make that decision, and you live and die with it. You know. So as a director, you get a lot of credit. But you shouldn't, because it takes 40 people to 100 people to make it. But if the movies is not as successful, you go down with it too. But that's what you sign up for, I guess.
Did you self-finance All Roads to Perla?
Actually, we financed All Roads to Perla with private equity, tax, and debt. So a bank, and then that's the three components how we got it. So we had investors, and then we shot in Oklahoma that gave us a 32% tax incentive to shoot there, and then we made up that tax incentive through financing through a bank loan with that. So that's how we came up with the budget, and we're able to hit the ground in Oklahoma because of that. Yeah.
So what happens first? The self-financing, you have like your own little chunk, and then you decide what state you want to go to, and go to their film commission, or what? Yeah,
so you could go like Atlanta, New Mexico, Louisiana. It just all depends, and then you have to go to the film commission. You file an application. You got to, if it meets all the requirements, and even while you're in production, you have to keep really good books and records, and there's going to be a third-party audit and all these different things before. So it's pretty extensive, and you want to have that covered and of that. But if you were to shoot, whether it's in California, Vancouver, you know, for producers out there that are trying to raise a dollar, having a tax incentive, you really need to raise 68 cents to the dollar. So that's what that meant, because you're spending in that state and you're also hiring the crew. In that there's supposed to be a percentage of cast and crew that is from that state, to you know, follow the rules of the tax incentives. So each state will have their own, like New York and New Mexico and things like that. So it's a really, I think right now, even in Australia or New Zealand, because of the pandemic, I think their incentives, if I read correctly, was like 50% or something now. So
wow.
They're just trying to get production going.
And then tell me about this loan.
Oh, so let's say your budget is $10 million, and you're shooting in Oklahoma, and they're going to give you 32%. So really, effectively, you only have to raise $6.8 million, right? So, but to make the full $10 million, you don't get that money right away. You need to make up that sort of gap and things. So you need to get a collateral or loan to make the 10 million, the 3.2 million. So that would be a bank or whoever could give you that. You know, that's what debt, or maybe there's another person that's going to loan you that money, but that's going to be debt. So that's what happened. So after you finish shooting, after you do the audit, then you get the money back from Oklahoma. After you file everything, then you could pay back the debt.
And that's a gap loan?
I'm not too.
Oh, okay.
You know, that's a little bit. That's a little bit different.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you can't get one without the other. So you couldn't just go and say, hey, I want to shoot here and I want incentives, but then you don't have your own quote unquote equity deposit that you're putting in. You've got to have that first. Is that right? Because you can't go without any of your own money in, or is that
Well,
not
you
true?
can't.
You can.
It just depends, because if you want the full budget, because that includes post-production, deliverables, and things. If you're an independent producer and you have just enough to get into production, maybe do another fundraise or another raise later to finish the movie, called finishing funds, just in case. Because if you just want to get like in production, you could raise the production budget. Post-production money could be raised later. It just all depends on how you do it. For instance, it costs to color the film, to make DCPs, to get an editor, things, all of that. That's the composer, sound mix. But if you just have enough money to get into production, it just depends on you and your producers and how you feel about that. It's tricky. It's definitely you want the full budget, but if you have enough just to get in production, and then the actors are only available that time period, you never know if it's going to go. So you're like, hey, let's just get on the ground and shoot.
So theoretically, can you approach a film commission to apply for incentives before you have any budget raised?
They'll ask you if you do. You got to show how much capital and equity that you've raised and things. I didn't fill that part out, so the other producers did, but I'm not specific on the Oklahoma thing. But we had raised the equity to get there, and then you have to, I believe, show your bank statements and things like that. So they know, hey, you're just gonna say, hey, I have the budget, and then you get there and you don't, and things like that. So yeah, they have their vetting process as well.
And you had originally wanted to shoot in Texas, correct?
That's correct, yeah, and that's because the film's set in Texas, and I had scouted in Fort Worth and things, but just strictly because of the tax incentive, and we just drove up 3 hours, having the same landscape, and we were able to, shoot in Oklahoma instead. Yeah.
How did you pitch the company that helped you finance All Roads to Perla?
I met Red Sanders of Red Entertainment and Red Productions through our composer named Curtis Heath, who did a lot of my short films. And they were in Fort Worth, and I was scouting down there, and he was like, "Hey, have you talked to Red Entertainment?" I was like, "No, I haven't." And then they have offices in Santa Monica, and I was in LA at the time, and sent over an email and said, "Hey, we have a mutual friend, Curtis. I've got this script that I'm, going to be doing." And they read it, loved it. We had a meeting, and I love people from Texas, and they were like sweethearts, and they were just great. And Derek and Red are just fantastic folks. And then I had my mood reel, I had my lookbook, I had pretty much things set up, and they liked it. And then I eventually became with Go Pop Films and Red Productions, and we held sort of certain meetings for investors and things like that. But eventually we cobbled up the financing through separate investors and got that all done. Red and Derek were instrumental in lifting the project even further and getting the script to Lindsey Graham, who worked at Betty May Casting, and she was just finished casting like A Star Is Born and Suicide Squad and things like that, and bigger features. But she really liked the script and came on board, and through that our project picked up steam, and we were able to. That's how we were able to get actors to respond and things like that, and that's how we got lucky in terms of nailing some of these really, like Dash and Addison and Alex and the whole crew there. So without that involvement, without Red and Derek and and Lindsay, I would have been just shooting All Roads to Perla with my father in there acting, So, somehow it just swims up. And then, mind you, we also approached tons of other production companies who we wanted to partner up with. But, you get, hey, we don't get the script, it's not for us, or we have a similar project, or, it's lots of things. So that's why I even sit back here today just thinking it's a miracle that it's even out there for people to see. So it goes back to that question, when is it good or crap? Charles Bukowski, and I was like, man, after just going through this gauntlet, I'll reserve my opinions to myself.
Do you know why some of the investors passed? Did they give you, when these were people, I know you said that they had said it might be similar to something I already have, or it's not for them, but when Red sent it out to the people in his network?
Yeah, it has to do with subject matter, it has to do with connection, has to do with people connecting it, or people wanting to change the story, or people want to do this, or does it resonate? So back to your question, why do you want to write this? So you have to find people that kind of falls in that wheelhouse, that believes the same way you do. Our film is about love and pain, loss, love, lust. It's a dark and gritty film, and it's not for everyone. It's to me, there's messages of hope, but to others, they might see an ugly side of society that doesn't hit. Especially so when an investor reads it, are they going to connect with this? So they either do or they don't, and you go into the next person who connects with it and find that. So if you're out there, it's just like, first you have to champion yourself, then find people that would help champion you, and then keep going. I think that's the steps.
When you're dealing with production companies, investors, what do they want to see first? A log line, synopsis of the script?
Yeah, so basically, log line gets everyone. If you could make a killer log line, I know it's hard, 1-2 sentences. Your pitch deck, your lookbook, your mood reel, for them to get them excited to read the script. No one wants to read anything. So, that's the problem. There's just a lot of scripts. So how do you get people to read it? So you have to entice them, whether it's through that log line, through the lookbook, through the mood reel, through whoever's already attached, or an actor or producer. It just has, and that's what they call it, a package, I guess. You package things so it makes it harder for them to say no. So that's what I would do, as much as you can. So definitely start with a lookbook. So at least it gives you an idea of what the story is about, the mood and tone. And then, you don't want to give a crime thriller to family drama production company, unless they want to branch off and do something different because they're used to doing that. So just, maybe research comparable films and what production companies that have produced that in that particular budget level, and then approach them, things like that. So IMDb pros will be your friend, and just research, and then just send out and hope someone reads it. It took me 5 years, so
Can you describe the All Roads to Perla lookbook? How many images were in it? How many pages?
Sure. So basically, it's like a PowerPoint presentation. I think mine had like 12 pages, and I'll say I'll have a picture, the color palette, the tone, pictures from a lot of the pictures, because I had photographed already because of my photography. So it's already a world that I've already created. Then I would add, the log line, the tone, the theme, and then that's the feel, the visuals of it, what this movie would look like. And then I had a mood reel. So what that meant was I clipped together films and music and made like a trailer of how the film would look like. It's interesting because I just looked at my mood reel that I created. I hadn't looked at it in ages. And you should see it to the trailer right now, 5 years apart, to see the difference. It's pretty fascinating. And our composer, the sound designer, was like, man, oh my God, just saw that mood reel. That dance scene looks almost identical to what we shot. I didn't know what was what. It's kind of fascinating. So if you could show what the world you're creating already without shooting it, it's a quicker way to creating a short film to create that atmosphere. At least it'll entice you to read the script. That's all I wanted someone to do. That they knew I knew how to make visuals, I knew how to make sound. Now you just judge me on my narrative writing. So that was my thought process.
And how long is the mood reel?
It's like 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes or 2 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that. Or a previs, they call it a previs too. So I do that now. Like if they send me, managers send you scripts to read, and it's something you like and you want to be up for it to direct, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great script. That's fantastic. I'll quickly throw up a mood reel and go, this is how I see the film. This is what I'll do. The tone and mood of it.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it was about 3 to 4 years of this process of you sending out the lookbook, the mood reel, the packaging for All Roads to Perla. How many people did you actually send it to? And what was their response time? How many actually read the screenplay?
I have an Excel spreadsheet of everyone who I would send it to. I don't remember. I know I kept it because I like to keep track of it. A lot of people did not read or did not respond. The majority of it. I was even determined to shoot it no matter what. it was that fateful sort of, it only took one, which was Red Productions. So maybe out of 50 to 100 Red Productions, or I'm just throwing out a number. I know it was pretty, Red Productions came on, and even after Red came on, we went to bigger production companies to kind of get involved, and that was pretty much turned down too. So we just did our own. So that process, I couldn't even get my friends to read it. I couldn't get that's what I'm saying. No one likes to read anything, you know, even what have you. It's that's why it's a miracle that Derek was like, read it and loved it. So it just took, you know, it was like, oh, what is this story and what's that, you know. So to be long-winded, it took, I submitted it for quite a few, and it was really just one or two that responded, and then that was it. You know, that's all it kind of took.
Knowing that it's very difficult to get anybody to read a script, is there anything you think you could do to speed up this process the next time around?
I think the next time around, it's getting easier, but I think most people don't make it to the next time around. So the first time around, I don't think there is. I think it's just because we're saturated, and even it's like I always go back to that Denzel Washington quote, you know, you stick around the barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. So no matter it's the third rejection, the 100th, or the 400th, you just got to stick it out. And then you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to just get tired and go, I don't need to wait for anyone. I don't need this production company to say yes. I'm going to do it. And then you set a date. Once I set a date, that's when I got phone calls. When I said November 13th, a specific date, I'm shooting no matter what, this train is going. Then it started, even with actors and even with this stuff. So you have to be very specific. You can't go, I'm shooting in the fall. I'm shooting November 13th, even at 2 p.m. We're rolling, first night, you know, things like that. That helped because that made it real. You know who was important to? Me. It made it real for me. So I was like, then whoever I said that to, I'm doing it, you know? And then, so that's why I was like, gosh, I'm either delusional or naive, but I think you have to. So that's sort of what happened. So I don't know if I could do anything different.
And the other part that you said, most people don't get a second time to do this.
I was just looking at the numbers of something. Someone sent the numbers after your first feature. It was like, you know, 17%, you know, so that's not the majority, you know, especially when you have investors and people. So that's what I'm saying, as a producer, to have a sustainable career is to make the investors' money back. It's not about art, you know. As a director, you might be able to, but that's the fear. And you look at the stats and what's happening. So you have to mitigate that risk. You have to figure out ways to maneuver that, and that's the business side. That's not going, hey, this frame looks awesome. Oh, that's a great color, great makeup, and this. It's how are we going to do this again, and how can we deliver it, and how can we shoot it in time, and how we get it under budget. That's just the reality of it, and you know, and that's the brutal part of it. Unless you shoot it with your iPhone, and you know, and which is great, and have crew, but there's only a certain amount of favors you could call. You know, you don't want to not pay people to work their long, hard hours and what they do. You know, there's only so much. You know, I just feel that's just me personally. I don't want to be a production company that doesn't pay people to not do their. You know, everyone needs to be paid. So and takes a lot of people to make something, and that adds up to the budget. So.
Would you say it's easier for you to get your emails returned now that you have an excellent body of work to point to?
Yeah, I would think so, because you have that first feature kind of done. So now they can't say, oh, he hasn't done a first feature. But now they could say, but he hasn't done a thriller. You know, there's always something. But the whole name of the game, I think what's important is if it gives you confidence. It gave me confidence to keep going. So all these little wins, so if you get any little win, any little thing, keep it, because there's just so many losses. So you could get this confidence to keep going. Now, because of All Roads to Perla Sleeping in Plastic script, I got management opportunity and I had 3 other scripts ready to rock and roll and a TV pilot. So I'm waiting on this. I wanted to make sure I'm not, when opportunity meets, you're talking to people, oh, what are you doing after this? I'm not fumbling and going, oh, I'm working on something. I was like, here you go. I've got tons left. And I wanted it to create a situation where it was harder for people to say no. You know, like I didn't want to wait around, because you're waiting around all these years. So all that anxiety made me write, you know, and do all these kinds of things. So I wanted to make sure I had things. So I was able to get reps, and then they now help push the projects and things, and you know, thankful for that in terms of trying to climb this hill of creation, you know, of getting projects made. So I'm still learning each day, this whole thing, you know. So which yeah, it's fun.
Did you approach Gravitas, or did they approach you?
We have a sales agent, Prince Films, and who their duty is to try to get our film sold to different territories and things. And I think Gravitas, Igor Prince reached out to Gravitas, and then they made an offer that was suitable for us, and then that was for North America. So it's being distributed, you know, through all streaming platforms, cable and things. We had a limited theatrical release plan, but in LA and New York, but that got, you know, squashed. But again, you know, we're super thankful for it just to reach daylight. You know, considering what so many other filmmakers are going through and having their films shown up this year, and not even going through the festival route with all the virtual festivals and things like that. We were lucky to start our festival last year run, and then it ended earlier because of the pandemic. So, but we were able to get North American distribution.
Did you have to sell the film in any way to Gravitas, or because you went through this sales agent?
Yeah, so you kind of sort of, you have your film, and you could either sell it through different territories or worldwide. And so Igor, he does the dealings for that. You can go to Gravitas yourself, I believe, or any distributor, for that matter. You know, you don't. I would equate it to having, if you built a house, you could sell your house by yourself, or you could get a realtor. They get a commission, things of that sort. So usually when you have sales reps and they have relationships prior to, you know, because you're bombarded usually by a lot of films. Some people answer the phone more than others, and then Igor took our film through all the different markets, you know, Toronto, Cannes, different things. So they would have booths set up, and film buyers would take a look and things like that. So that's the advantage, I would say, with having a sales agent who is there to help push the sale of your film. But we went with Gravitas because they had you know, good favorable terms. They were you know, nice folks, and it was also, you know, a situation where we still have international rights as well.
How has COVID impacted your filmmaking career?
Let's see. I think just in terms of in general, just personally and professionally, it puts everyone at a pause. We talked about earlier, like to see what is important in life. What do we want to do? It kind of makes you think about those kinds of things. How it personally has affected my filmmaking life is, I think when you go through the process of owning a business or trying to make a film, there's always a monkey wrench. And if you could survive the monkey wrench, and if it hasn't taken your legs out and you're still standing, you keep trudging along. There's whether and I try to have that state of mind and mentality. Okay, if I can't do this, then there's something else I can do while this is happening. I could write, I could research, I could think of ideas, I could chill out, balance life, maybe spend more time with family, more, not be so self-absorbed and go. So those are the things that we all have to question ourselves every day. And then I was just talking with my wife the other day. It's like, feels like I've been running for 10 years running, and it just feels weird to not run, because you're just so used to it. But sometimes you need just to relax and take it off and recharge, and think about others beside yourself and your career and what you want to do, and it's like that's I hope to try to be better at, and as we all try to navigate these crazy times. And so yeah, I hope we, like I said, we still have our pencil and notepad and final draft, and we could still keep writing.
Yeah, sorry, I have to bring up this, it's cliche, but just the scene in Forrest Gump where he's running and everyone's like, oh, he stopped, okay, wait, hang on, he's gonna speak. And then all he just says is, I'm tired now, I think I'm gonna go home.
Yeah, that movie is excellent in every single way, and because those scenes, those moments are relatable. It's like, that's why all these great songwriters, the great screenwriters, they do something so simple, and it makes you feel like you can do it. And that's the best part. To write a song to make you want to go and learn how to play a guitar, that's amazing for everyone. So that to have Forrest Gump or Princess Bride or do these things, and you're like, hey, that's something I want to do. Whether we ever achieve that's not the case. It's just you want to give it a shot. And I think COVID kind of, for those who even were thinking if it's difficult out there to try to be a filmmaker, just find your half-price books and buy a book and read and write, and don't think about what's happening in 10 years. Think about if it makes you happy today, and if you could write a story. I think that's the important part.